Hello, guys. So I was playing a bit of EU4, not 5 yet. And I was watching this video right here. I close YouTube and OBS and all that, but just make sure we're live first before I go into what I was saying. This lady right here is fucking crazy, dude. I don't know if you can see where my mouse is on the thing, but like, there's this person right here, the fat one. Dude, she's crazy. She's literally insane. She threw mashed potatoes on this dude, and that sounds so weird when I say that, but I'm just gonna put the video back to the beginning and you'll watch.
Not vote for Trump, we'll vote for you. That's what you're saying.
In a general election, yes. If it is me versus a Republican, I think that I will win the people who did not vote for Trump.
What if it's you versus another Democrat?
I don't intend that to be the case.
Well, that's convenient.
So how do you not intend that to be the case? Are you going to ask them not to run?
No, I'm saying I'm going to build the support. I have the support already in terms of name recognition. And so I'm going to do the very best I can to make sure that we get through this primary in a really strong position. But let me be clear with you. I represented Orange County. I represented a purple area. I have stood on my own 2 feet and won Republican votes before. That's not something every candidate in this race can say. If you're from a deep blue area, if you're from LA, or you're from Oakland, you don't have an experience.
You just said you don't need those Trump voters.
Well, you asked me if I needed them to win.
So you don't
I feel like this is unnecessarily argumentative. What is your...
You see her getting mad, bro, getting her hands up, everything like this.
Okay,
Can you imagine
I
having
think
to deal
we're
with
live on
somebody
YouTube.
like this?
Give me a
Oh my
second, guys.
god.
Just checking.
This is like an elite Karen raid boss.
Okay, cool, we're live. But yeah, this lady's beyond crazy, dude. Literally beyond crazy.
The empowering
you'll see in a
voters to
second.
stop Trump's power grab. Every other candidate has answered this question. This is not
Correct. And I said I support it.
So, and the question is, what do you say to the 40% of voters who voted for Trump?
Oh, I'm happy to say that. It's the do you need them to win part that I don't
So why not just say tell them to fuck off? Like, you can clearly see that she's avoiding the question because her real answer to it is fuck them, I don't care about them, but she doesn't want to say that because it sounds bad. But the problem is that people like this are so obnoxious and so annoying that anything they do sounds bad because this is just what they do.
I'm happy to answer the question.
But yeah, in the game we're playing as
Do you think you need any of those 40% California voters to win? And you're saying no, you don't.
No, I'm saying I'm going to try to win every vote.
Yeah, we kind of lost our
what I'm saying
campaign, even though Sweden is like OP as fuck.
You know you're getting wrapped up.
We only have one of our primary
I
culture
mean, this is my
provinces.
opinion. Is like if you get flustered and upset like this on an interview, but you can't even answer a simple question like this, like you do not need to be running anything.
I don't want to keep doing this. I'm going to call it.
She's mad.
You're not going to do the interview with us?
Nope, not like this. I'm
Road
not with
raging
7
cow.
follow-ups to every single question.
It's actually only one follow-up. It's really just one.
Every other candidate has the
I don't think. I want to have a positive conversation with you ask me about every issue on this list. And if
with everybody, I want to have an interview where you ask me about how right I am about these different topics. And I want to, like, how do you say that you want positive interviews? Like, this isn't your fucking, this isn't your campaign staff, this is the news. They need to ask you questions. Karen logic? It is. It's Karen logic. It is. Absolutely.
make up a follow-up question, then we're never going to get there.
Yeah.
Make up a
And
follow-up
we're just
question.
going to circle around.
I am an
I have never had to do this before, ever.
That's the problem. That's the problem, is you should have been doing this all along, so we could have filtered your stupid ass out years ago. But for some reason, people put up with your aggressive, patronizing Karen logic and behavior, and now you're here.
You've never had to have a conversation with any reporter? Okay, but every other candidate has done this.
What part of I'm mean?
I'm queen.
What part of, no, I'm special. I don't have
Cow.
No.
And her eyes look insane.
I'm a, wait, what?
I'm mean. I'm running for governor for number 2.
What are you reading? Golden Corral? What the fuck are you talking about? they're afraid of it. No, this is very, very reassuring. Definitely, guys. The exact attributes of Kamala Wallace, except this bitch is way worse. She's so interesting. Oh my god. There's more of them too.
I'm a journalist, but I will go to my things, and if you don't want to, you don't want to. So nearly every legislative body,
I don't want to have
This lady is so annoying.
This woman would have made a great queen in like a medieval age that sentences servants to like death for like the servant brings her water and the water isn't cold enough and she like just decides that he's gonna get killed. I think you really like this woman was born 1,000 years too late. In like the Middle Ages, times around there, like she could have made a great like a psychopathic
I don't want to
fucking everybody who disagrees with you rule. Like, yeah, this is great. And yeah, Katie Angelman. Yeah, I guess so, right?
I don't want to put any problems with you either. I would love to continue to ask these questions so that we can
Nobody wants that unhappy experience.
about every one of the issues that they care about.
She's roid raging that she made a fucking
just about
idiot of herself. That's why she was like leaning back and forth, like she was like, oh my god, oh my god.
Katie Porter would pour scalding hot mashed potatoes on your head if you're not.
This part though.
I would have never assumed. Honestly, this is a big surprise to me. I would have never expected her to waste food. Big Rep Katie Porter scalded ex-husband's scalp with potatoes. Document show. The former husband, that poor man, of Representative Katie Porter said, and yeah, back in the old days, that would have been boiling, hot, burning oil, okay? So, remember what I said? It's becoming more and more true. And anyway, Katie Porter said that said that the California Democrat frequently abused him verbally and threw toys, books, and other objects at him during their marriage. Can you believe that? Can you believe? Wow. That's crazy. I instantly, you just look at her, you know it's true. She spent I see her for 3 minutes, I know this bitch is crazy. Can you imagine that? Yeah, but she actually is making a mistake. This isn't you should be running for governor of the Homeowners Association. Not the city, or the state, no. This should be the governor of the Homeowners Association. That's her job. That's what she's meant to do. Even pouring scalding hot mashed potatoes on his head during a fight, according to divorce reports. Matthew Hoffman, who filed for divorce from Porter in 2013, said in a request for a restraining order dated April 30th of that year that he was routinely called a fucking idiot and fucking incompetent by his rage-prone spouse, more like rage-prone crone, who also shattered a glass coffee pot on their kitchen counter in March 2012 when she felt that their house wasn't clean enough. Oh my god, at least, yes, bro, he got away. He got away from it. That's crazy. Yes. And so let's go back. We're going to watch some of these other clips about it too. And let's see if I can find it. Katie Porter. And you can see, obviously, it's just totally going down here. And she was actually winning. Isn't that sad? That's scary, isn't it? And, oh, here's another one. Okay, let's see if I can find any more of this here. She rudely interrupted this interview. Oh, this is Gavin Newsom being an asshole. Yeah, California's really got a lot of winners in it. Okay, so let's go over. We're going to watch another one. And this is her also in her house. This is, I guess, during COVID.
This fall in September, and what it showed is if we don't electrify our transportation sector, that we're going to lose more than 500,000 Californians die prematurely to air pollution and other problems, and the state could lose thousands of fucking jobs.
who that person in the background is, but this lady's insane.
Yeah, somebody's got to get this. Yeah, somebody maybe give her a shot collar for her assistance. Damn, bro.
Okay, you also were in my shop. Stay out of my shop.
She going hog wild.
I'm just going to end with vehicle safety.
How do you let this get oh my god. Like, really? I watch this? Fuck, no, we don't want to deal with this bitch. Oh my god. The Empress? Yes, exactly. Just imagine, have you ever been around a person like this? Because if you have, you know this is real. How's she not embarrassed? Because she's used to getting in her way because she's obnoxious, belligerent, aggressive, and hostile. And most people just give her what she wants so she will go away. That's the
I feel like Denmark is like kind of like
it's like you give her, you're like,
subtly overpowering. Like either that or I suck the game, but I know I don't suck the game, so I used to play it all the time.
Leave. We're gonna give it to
I
you
just
for
have
free.
to. I've been playing a lot of Vic 3 lately,
negotiator.
Victoria 3.
The
So, yeah,
Giga
that's
Karen?
why.
Yes. This is the final boss right here.
It's kind of nice that
This
it
is
hasn't
the
cut out
2%er.
yet. I don't know
Well,
really
you know. And then
what I
it
set up
gets
different
better.
on.
Video resurfaces of
I don't know if it's
Democratic
me changing the
gubernatorial
VPN
candidate Katie Porter
settings,
showing up to work in Washington D.C.
or
in a Batgirl
if it's,
costume. That's right, guys. It gets better. Porter wore the outfit on the same day the Democrats
It might also be
voted
that I
for
changed
resolution
the
on
encoder
ground rules
settings
for impeaching Trump
on OBS,
back in
but yeah.
2019. That's right. Oh shit, man, what is this? Yeah, what is this? She listed for? Yeah, this is. Oh my god. There we go, guys. God tier trolling. I guess so. This is what people voted for? Well, I mean, California is a very interesting place with a number of very complex people in it. Nobody knows exactly why or how it's gotten this way, but we know that it is this way. I don't know why. They forgot the cow print. Yeah, the cow print outfit, I guess, was it was taken.
If you return the Batmobile, could you pay for the Green New Deal?
Return the Batmobile. Can you pay for the Green New Deal? Okay, so there you go, right here. And then she drops her drink, and you can see her mauling out over this, right? And yeah, why is she wearing this? I don't know why. Why would somebody do this? This right here, gentlemen.
I have an idea. So I think we're gonna go into.
One of the leading Democrat candidates right here.
This is
it?
Maybe able to
Yes, so.
helping us.
Yeah, and is that Halle Berry? No, it's not. I can see why you get confused though. Probably talk to your doctor about glasses though. And no H is in the governor of my state. I can't explain it. This is insane. And there's even more of it too. It's not like this. You think this is the end of it? It's not the end of it. This is the Karen Breed. Yes, this is the last boss of all Karens. After every other Karen has been defeated, just be there. The last one standing. Oh God. And let's see here. Yeah, Karen Antoinette. Yeah, I know. And so here you go again.
Oh, yes, this is why I get I'm so sorry, but I am about to correct. Hang on 1 second, everybody. Yes, let's be yes. Okay, everybody.
Somebody's about to get, yeah. Somebody's about to get executed. And now. Comes back, all the fucking assistants are dead. Blood over. Okay, alright, now we're fine. Anyway, so we need to have more empathy in this country, and we need to start thinking more about blood everywhere, yeah. Mashed potatoes everywhere? Yeah, and guarantee her staffers do this to fuck with her. You're right. I bet they're doing it wrong on purpose. They're like, oh, sorry, Katie. Did I say the right Oops.
Okay, everybody, I'm sorry.
Did you see that?
What's she bald? There's a fucking 8 head.
I'm sorry about that.
God damn. She got to get the shock collars for everybody. She was afraid, bro. She was terrified.
Oh, I should have just got a national idea.
Yeah, for sure, definitely. Why not just sit at the fucking studio desk, you moron? You're sitting there with, you're using a webcam from your laptop. That's obviously good. Just go sit in the fucking studio. You fucking retarded. Like, you can't, you really can't. Oh, wait a minute. There's stairs. You have to go up the stairs to the studio, or to the set. So you can see how this thing's raised. So, yeah, we would never do that. Yeah, I think so. So, yeah, it's like climbing a mountain. Can you believe it's a mountain climbing a mountain? Anyway, so where's a few more of these here? Exactly, it's not hard to believe. Yes, these are the types of women everywhere. Mommy, dearest vibe, yes. And so, and look at all of these other clips. Oh, here we go. Let's listen to her here.
Weird looking.
It is the allegation of groomer and pedophile. It is alleging that a person is criminal somehow and engaged in criminal acts merely because of their identity.
What is this?
So this retarded hog wants to say that pedophiles aren't criminals? Am I getting this right? I can't even believe this.
Their sexual orientation, their gender identity. So this allegation of groomer and pedophile. It is alleging that a person is criminal somehow.
Oh my God.
And engaged in criminal acts merely because of their identity. Their sexual orientation, their gender identity.
Yeah, that's a lot. She's addressing her family secrets. Yeah, check if she has kids or not. I mean, those poor kids. I don't know. Maybe that's not it. It certainly sounds fucking weird, man. And, yeah. She's the one recording this, so this isn't even the worst side of her. Yeah, I guess so. Like at this point, as an attacker, as I told you, a supporter, yeah, this is nuts, man. Like, it's ridiculous. Maybe this is cut in a weird way, but I mean, all these other clips put together, I mean, guys, this is not looking good at all. This is looking real. And then so you got this one. Oh, here we go. She couldn't get more unlikable. All right, let's watch it. Here we go.
I'm running for governor because I'm old. That are killing them. Yes, yes, he should have. Yes. Okay, everybody, I knocked that door. It was the allegation of groomer and pedophile. It is alleging that a person is criminal and engaged in criminal acts.
Okay. Maybe she was saying that calling somebody trans means that they're a pedophile and the pedophiles are criminals. Okay, maybe she's not that retarded. She's just a psycho. Maybe.
Identity. Their sexual
I think that's right. Yeah, maybe.
So on election night, I went to pick up my daughter from Waterfall.
That poor girl. What did you do to her?
And she's 12, and she got in the car. She was crying.
mashed
I don't wanna keep
potatoes,
going.
bro. The
Oh
mashed
my God,
potatoes.
Let's see if there's any more of this,
Dude,
too.
you
This
make
is
mashed
nuts.
potatoes way too often, you
It shows
fat
like here's
fuck.
Morgan in a wig. I maybe. Katie Porter meltdown. Katie Porter Batman. Oh my God! Look at this. Are there any more of these here too? And let's see here. She's treated staff like garbage. Yeah, sure. I cannot allow you back into the office given your failure to follow office policies. Oh, geez, that's a lot. And, well, you gave me COVID. Oh, she said that oh, man. She thinks somebody gave her COVID. CNN is hiding it.
I think that Katie Porter's making history because she has potentially annihilated her chances to be the next governor of California, more so than any other candidate I've ever seen so quickly. My goodness gracious, what are we talking about right here? Well, let's take a look.
What are we talking about right here?
According to the Kalski prediction market, Katie Porter's chances have fallen through the floor. Just 2 days ago, she was the plurality leader in the prediction market.
Plurality.
40%.
That's a lot.
Now, get this, her chance has fallen by more than half to just 16%. My goodness gracious.
My
Meanwhile,
goodness
Alex
gracious.
He isn't even running. Wait, so she's losing to a guy that's not even running.
who's not even running for governor of California at this point. He's a sitting senator from that state. His chances have gone up through the roof, from 10% all the way to 27%, nearly gone up threefold.
Wow.
Now, one of the big reasons why the prediction market's
Not so good,
so
huh?
much on Katie Porter's chances to be the next governor of
Because she's an
California
obnoxious
is
bitch.
because people are really interested in this story. Take a look here. Google searches for Katie Porter
10,000%.
at an all-time high, despite Katie Porter having a long political career. Get this, up over 10,000.
So she's had a reign of terror that's gone on for quite a while. This is scary.
Percent versus just a week ago, and not so surprisingly, the top topic searched alongside Katie Porter at this point, interview. It turns out maybe you shouldn't
What a surprise.
snap at a local political reporter.
Yeah, or just snap at your own. Like, this is the same thing, and then, oh, you've got this one here, too. Let's see if I can find any more of this. Right there, this woman is obsessed with abortion. Yeah, authorities warn Katie Porter's grown to 600 feet is currently rampaging. Oh, God. And
President Biden has said that inflation is the
I'm gonna let these
number
guys
one
win.
priority for the
I don't
Biden
wanna-
White
I
House
don't wanna
to try
have
to
to.
get under control right now. As you're out there in California talking to constituents during this re-election year for Congress, how does inflation compare to this newly important, in the sense of the Supreme Court decision pending, an abortion issue? How do those two issues compare?
Well, I don't think they compare. I think they actually reinforce each other. So the fact that things like inflation can happen and it can become more expensive to feed your kids and to fuel your car is exactly why people need to be able to be in charge of how many mouths they're going to have to feed. So I think the fact that we're
Maybe
seeing
you
this
eat
jump
all
in
your
expenses,
family's food,
that we're
fat
seeing
fuck.
people having to pay more in the
Fat
grocery
fucking
store, pay more at the
thing.
pump, pay more for housing, is a reason that people are saying, I need to be able to make my own decisions about when and if to start a family. So I don't think we're going to see them. I don't think it's like about comparing them
so you
or
have to abort your kids for inflation. Okay.
contrasting them.
Yeah.
I think they reinforce for people just how big of a responsibility it is to take care of a family.
Yeah, sure, right? That doesn't sound like it's too crazy, but all right, let's look at a few more of these. I mean, the Batwoman thing is, I think this one is crazy. Like, I'm sorry, but if I see somebody do this and they get mad and they drop their drink because they're that mad, that to me, that's it. I've seen enough. Like, I've already seen enough. I don't need to go any farther than that. I think that I already know more than enough. You check Trump Streusel, it's Halloween, bro. No, it wasn't. That's the thing. I'm pretty sure it wasn't Halloween. That's the issue. Like, I'm not sure. Like, was it Halloween? Like, I'm pretty sure it wasn't. It was not.
I honestly think we might be able to get our territory back here if these guys win, which looks like they might.
Y'all get worried about this.
But yeah.
And, soon Trump will lose or go to. Oh
And so
We're gonna start fabricating a spy network on these guys, or done the spy network, and I'm gonna work on supporting preference. I don't know if we have enough money though to do it. We might have to develop Finland a bit. We'll get each to. I think we have a mission to get each of these to.
And so people.
Jesus, bro, like, what is wrong with her? Oh my God. Yeah, yeah, this is nuts. And it's who is this? Oh my God. Border Patrol got Katie Porter. No, this has got to be.
What's your name? I got you. Yep. Debbie Brown.
There's more than one of these things?
Brockman. WGN.
Oh my God. Yeah, holy shit, guys.
It just always plays up next, so
imagine being able to build an app with your name on it. Just by thinking about it. Meet Base 44. A complete describe what you want. And watch it take shape. You can plan, customize, and expand in any direction. Built for one.
Wait, are we independent now? I think we're independent.
From passion projects to enterprise-grade systems, everything is built in and ready to launch. It's a new world where you can go as far as your imagination takes you. Can you imagine it? Let's make your dream a reality right now.
Are we independent? I don't know. We are. Wait, I think we are. Oh hell yeah. We're kind of fucked though, because we've got a lot of random territory spread out. We got these guys as a vassal. We got this random thing. We're gonna have to kind of play the underhanded role in the game. I don't really know how we're gonna do this. Might do.
Desperate to cancel me. Of course, canceling me, as always. It's another day. So Hassan's uncle, Chief Peter, who's a co-founder of the Young Turks, in which Hassan used to work on, to my understanding. Well, Cenk had this really weird rant about Asmongold recently, and it's filled with a lot of coke where he's trying to like act like he doesn't know who Asmongold is, despite the fact that this guy is completely in the realm of
I don't even think about it.
Yeah, I mean, that's yeah. Commentator, and that Hassan himself constantly cries about Asman. So you would just expect Cenk to probably know who Asman is. It seems kind of like a lie, at least in my opinion. And then he does this impression of Asmongold that's really just an impression of Alex Jones. And he's trying to act like Asmongold sounds like Alex Jones or something. It's just a really, really weird clip. I'll play it for you. Let me know what you think.
Hey, if you're a Democrat and you're criticizing the right wing, think about if the shoe was another thing. Now, this brother comes along. I don't know who Asman is. I mean, people say maybe that he's got a following.
The way he says it makes me think that he's saying S-Man. Listen to it again.
This brother comes along. I don't know who Asman is.
Like, really? Like, I'm hearing S-Man.
I mean, people say maybe that he's got a following, but I never heard of him, right? And his brother and his co-conspirator, Jägermeister, right? But this guy's talking about, oh yeah, run over protesters. I don't mind it. So you don't mind extreme violence, running over somebody with a car, okay? But why don't we instead arrest them for exercising one of the most fundamental American rights, freedom of speech? The one, remember, that you guys all pretended you were in favor of?
Yeah.
I know some of them meant it, but apparently a lot of them, including Asman and Jägermeister, didn't mean it. They thought, oh, freedom of speech for me, to say that maybe you should be murdered or be made my slave. My freedom of speech, good. And by the way, I wouldn't cancel that. I don't mind him saying the things that he says. Now we know who he is. So, and I'm not afraid of his speech. I'm not afraid that the majority of Americans are going to look at that and go, yeah, well, I think we should, instead of having freedom of speech, if anyone exercises freedom of speech in a way that I don't like politically, we should arrest them, take away all their rights, make sure they can't vote, and then turn them into slaves.
To me, this guy really comes off like he wrote down 100 terrible points and then like chugged a few Red Bulls and was like, how many went down, bro? He speed ran it, didn't he? These terrible points can I get through in like a 1 minute clip? And
I don't know.
Jones impression.
No,
probably what he was doing before he clipped this.
8% of Americans are going to be against that. But Asman thinks that's a great idea.
I feel like this is sped up.
Freedom of speech, almost as left-wingers. How dare they protest our government?
But like, I don't like it is.
Did you see what he said?
As I've said, this is an unprecedented level of buffoonery. These are levels of buffoonery that I didn't even know were possible before.
What the fuck? We have courts on this still. Yeah, we're gonna need to start supporting
level 100 buffoon.
Make sure they can't ever vote again. And I don't know if his followers were like, what an idiot. We said freedom of speech, dumbass. Okay? Or if they're like, yeah, we hate freedom of speech now that we're in charge. Let's turn them into slaves. Are 13 people watching that show? Who would like that kind of monstrously un-American piece of crap like that? Who doesn't believe in America at all?
I mean, I don't consume content like this. I can't imagine that Asmongold, well, whatever his name is, I can't imagine that he is watching this show right now either.
I always find it so trashy and mature when people try to insult Asmon by like intentionally butchering his name with the most grade school level insults you could possibly imagine. And to me, when
like, I'm gonna be real.
Whatever.
I don't even give the people enough credit that
I
think that they're doing it on purpose. I just assume that they don't know how to say it.
I know
how to say it. Yeah, it's probably true.
Did they already
do that? It doesn't make Asmon look bad. It actually makes them. Anyway, here's part of Asmon.
This guy's talking about, oh yeah, run over protesters. I don't mind it, he says. Yes. So you don't mind extreme violence, running over somebody with a car, okay?
Well, yeah, if they block your road, yeah, absolutely. If they don't let you try to get by and they crowd your car, I think you absolutely should be able to run them over. Yeah. And you can see how, and this is what I think is very funny about this, is that people like this are misrepresenting. This is why I don't debate with people. It's because they're just liars.
I know that
like you can't debate and argue and have a conversation with a person whenever they're not operating on the same wavelength as you are. So when you have somebody like Jank who's saying like, oh well, you're just trying to run out protesters, etc. You're not even trying to engage with the conversation. You're not even trying to understand the point of view that I'm putting forward. You're intentionally misunderstanding it in order to make a point, which is like, that's fine. You want to do that, go ahead and do that. But that doesn't mean that I'm going to take it seriously, okay?
Yeah, I think it's pretty interesting how Shank on the Young Turks is supposed to be this like official sort of political commentator.
I was literally like react-ception. I just realized that. What the fuck? I'm not really reacting. I'm just watching this and letting you guys watch while I'm like not commentating on my gameplay. Because it's like the game I'm playing right now takes a lot of focus, right? So like,
I'm just a guy on the internet.
Yeah.
Like, I don't really take myself that seriously or anything like that. It's not that big of a deal to me. Like being labeled or acknowledged as a certain thing or anything else. It's not a big deal.
Or Shank tries to present himself as, but he's much more level-headed and actually logical in stuff that he's saying. Not to just like sit here glazing Asmon, but I think anyone looking at this objectively would come to a similar assessment. Shank's over there raging, sounding like a weirdo, and Asmon's just talking normally about this all. Anyways, back to the clip. Asmon moves on from the discussion about how certain violent protesters, or you could just say rioters, have surrounded and physically banged on vehicles, making the driver, of course, fear for their safety. And in other cases, for example, here's what he gets at next, where we've seen like riots in LA, where federal agents are attacked by rioters who are cops, whether they're in vehicles or not.
So a person of deadly force, and so because a police officer is a person, I think that if you throw a rock at a police officer should be able to respond with deadly force by shooting you. That's my logic, that's my reasoning, and that's also Florida's logic. That's exactly what Florida does. So if you're mad at me for saying this, that's totally okay, but you also have to understand there is an entire state in our country that has the exact same viewpoint on this than I do. Don't try to act like I'm some extreme radical or some crazy person when there are states with millions of people in it that agree with this. And I think that most people agree with it. I hate how they misquote you so disingenuously. Well, they have to. They have to. They have to misquote me. They have to misrepresent me. Because they can't argue against what I'm saying. So they have to misrepresent what I'm saying, turn it into something else, and then argue against that. That's the reason why. this too. At a very like if somebody threw a rock at Cenk Uygur, I would say that if you wanted to shoot that guy, go ahead. Yep. Like if somebody's trying to hit you in the head with a rock, I mean, what are we talking about here? Why are we trying to rationalize and justify violent, aggressive behavior from people that are trying to destroy property?
I'm just gonna let it run, boys.
Actively trying to subvert the law. That's what they do. That's it. Nobody wants to have rocks thrown at them. Nobody wants to have anything like this happen to them. It's insane that we should expect police officers to be punching bags. It's unfair to them. It's entitled to the people who are angry, and it's also just the wrong thing to do.
Well, yeah, they're only people they disagree with. They would be outspoken against this stuff, but since it's their side, they're like totally fine with it. Same thing we see on Twitch with Hassan, right? Like they literally protect Hassan, and then people who do far less grievous things than Hassan has done, well, they get banned.
Yeah, Tectone getting banned for calling Frogan fat was like a super big mistake that they made. Like I think Twitch really, it's like they have rules for that, and I think it's okay that it's like if you want to make it a rule that like you can't make fun of or like make fun of a person's appearance or anything like that, that's fine. But there's no real reason that that shouldn't be applied even.
Now moving on from Cenk Uygur, we've got a little update about Hassan here, his nephew. He had posted, Hassan says Colorgate won't have any impact on his mainstream media favorability.
Do you think MSN will change their views on you after this? I feel like you were doing good, making waves, and MSN was no. No. If you notice, a lot of the outlets that have like covered this or attempted to cover this.
I don't know why Hassan tries so hard to seek the approval of mainstream media when he's doing so. Like he's built a massive media empire. Like he has a lot of YouTube channels that upload his content. He has TikToks that are very popular. His Twitter's very popular. Like I find it to be almost kind of degrading that he keeps trying to seek approval from these small publications that I think reach a fraction of the people that he does. That's my opinion.
I'm gonna do a run in Scotland, I think. I don't really think that...
By seeking legitimacy from them,
we'll see.
You remove legitimacy from yourself. By giving other people the ability to define your own legitimacy, you have now decided and told everybody, I am not worthy of being able to define my own legitimacy. I disagree with that. I think it's okay.
Well, we might be able to do something still, I don't know. We'll see.
Mainstream media.
Because if we can support Rebels as like a one,
I would try to seek their approval.
In Lubeck or something, like join Lubeck trade node,
without
trade
any
whatever.
sort of consideration for like defamation or whatsoever. It's been like Fox News, New York Post, shit like that. I'm sure that it doesn't really matter, ultimately. I think it was Gutfeld that even covered it as well.
Yeah.
The Hollywood Reporter covered the story. It was really funny because like they went to PETA, and PETA is like one of the most militant like pro-animal rights organizations out there. And
I don't know.
You can choose to raid a caravan, or you can choose. Imagine being able to build an app with your name on it just by clicking on it. Meet Base 44.
Desperate to cancel me. This has been a problem on the internet for a very, very long time. And now, finally, some people are talking about it, which is a relief. I'm glad. Here we go. What's a minute?
I kind of wish you could
It's
you could
a
play
derogatory insult to a person of
like
about average intelligence who perceives
as one of these
themselves to be above
countries
average.
that comes you know, because you never would die in EU4 unless you're like one of these fucking
that's
masters
what the insult means.
on YouTube.
So most people will average. Yes, that would be correct.
Today, we will be looking at the most obnoxious,
But then again, I try and play those smaller countries, or like the ones.
I mean, they're literally what you would get if you took the actually mean and turned it into a literal person. And to
Not
clarify,
fat
for
enough.
those who don't know, a midwit is someone who's of average intelligence, and they think of themselves and present themselves as someone of higher intelligence. which is seen in this name of the midwit. Then after that, we have this pseudo-intellectual. This person is perceptive, they pretend to be knowledgeable or intelligent, while they are somebody who lacks genuine depth and understanding of the subject.
Yeah, those are people that bring up logical fallacies. That kind of stuff.
Things, but they have a lot of overlap. Yeah. And a lot of the traits we just covered, they're generally...
yeah, it's the same person, generally. They're multi-classic.
People. And as somebody who has a lot of experience with these people in general, I believe I have a very good understanding. I know how they operate, why they behave the way that they do.
Anybody who makes content on the internet is fully aware of these people. I don't know if I call them people, but yeah.
Plenty of videos already have gone over this. They've covered this exact same topic. And I would say that they're very valuable. And for the sake of not regurgitating that same information, think of this video as an addendum to the work, and not the end-all be-all. Firstly, we have to understand them, know exactly what drives them. And at their core, they are very antisocial people who are extremely insecure. That is where a lot of their obnoxious behavior stems from. Now, let me give you an example here. Let's say that you were talking to one of these midwits, and you said, the weather outside looks beautiful. Off of that statement alone, they're gonna rush into it and say, yes, it is. And that happens because of the high pressure systems over our heads. You see, the clear skies happen when the air sinks instead of rising, the way that the sunlight...
So basically, they're AI before AI was created. They're like a chat GPT pot. Okay, got it.
The atmosphere and makes it look brighter.
Yeah, it's about right.
How we can prove what beauty is at the end of the day. Oh my word.
Yeah.
Just shut up. Nobody cares.
Shut up, retard.
Nobody gives a shit about whatever you're saying right there. We have all had this happen to us. We've had this person who goes on an extremely long tangent that nobody cares about, just for the sole purpose of...
This seems personal about me, but okay.
Demonstrating how much they've read. What is always at the center of their mind is, how can I take
being perceived as a person of above average intelligence, and being able to reflect that in front of other people to make them think that you're superior to them. That's the reason why they do this.
Opportunity to show the people around me how smart and knowledgeable
That's right.
Which at the end of the day is rotten to the core because it is only self-serving. We all sense this coming a mile away, and we hate it. Which ties into the key aspect of pseudo-intellectuals, why they're feigning knowledge, wisdom, or intelligence. They don't learn the things that they do because it's useful to implement it into their own lives. No, they don't care about that.
Nope.
What they care about is using it to impress the people around them.
What a surprise.
Which is just fake and shallow at the end of the day. Everybody hates. And the way we know that is true is because if you pay attention to a person's actions, it will tell you what they value, what their goal is.
Isn't it exhausting to do this your whole life? Well, there's a lot of people that spend their whole life being addicted to stupid things. This is just another version of that. Video. I wouldn't really be that surprised. This is
let's talk about this guy.
If you and me, we were talking,
this is that for them. That's normal.
I start to ask questions.
Yes.
I hear you out. This is my way of conveying without words that I care about you. I got what you deserve my attention. That's what you're showing. On the other hand, if I just I talked over you. I just went on irrelevant tangents about the things I know. That is my way to say you are. What I truly care about is not you, but it's how
it's all self-referential. It's selfish, self-referential logic that they just want to feel enemies.
This is what you actually mean. And at the end of the day, this action, it doesn't aid in the conversation. It doesn't aid in clarifying anything.
So I'm thinking we might try and form Spain militarily, but I want to use Genoa, one, to get their trade bonuses,
Again, you gotta remember what is
but I might give them a province somewhere around here. Probably down here, because I don't think we need anything in them. We need Valencia, we need Barcelona, and
is they characteristically don't even understand what they're talking about.
But we could give them a TIA, or whatever this nation was.
And he asked me what I do, and I told him I do freelance video. It's nice. What I was focusing on. Oh, I heard there are people who make a lot of money. You should try it.
A lot of money? It's $5. It's in the name.
If you do the smart thing and let the business come to you rather than seek it out yourself. Into this as a freelancer, it's a lot harder than you make it out. It's not that simple. But he didn't listen. He said, no. Trust me, I've seen it. You can just make an account on there and you'll do it.
This is like somebody trying to sell an MLM scam or something like that. Like, people that constantly try to insist that they know how to do your job better than you do, how fucking obnoxious. Oh my God.
What? Trust me. I mean, just
bro,
hurt, right?
Trust me, I know how it works.
And we were talking about this until I finally asked him and said, wait, have you ever done any video editing yourself or any commissions?
No.
And he said, no. I asked him again, have you done any work on Fiverr?
He says no.
And then he said, nah, man, but I've heard people do really well on it.
Well, see, I read on the internet it said it was good, so you're personally... No, if I read it on the internet, it's real.
And I instantly realized right at that point, I wasted my whole time talking to this fucking idiot who doesn't know anything he's talking about, who's telling me what I should do. And what's worse is if you stop to think about it, you realize these people don't care about you at all. Again, all of this is performative. The only thing he really cared about and when it's here was for me to say,
you're smart.
Yes,
I'm going to help you.
So he can feel good about himself. That's all he wanted. That's all he cared about. The whole proposition was simply self-serving to give him an ego boost. But let me tell you about another story. I one time.
That's a problem. Wow, that's a lot.
You should become a freelance wedding photographer. Sure.
People who say that type of shit are annoying. It's like, who the fuck cares? Who the fuck cares what someone else does? None of your fucking concern. Fucking farmers. Fucking tags.
You can see what the difference there is. So if you're not using what you're saying on somebody else, you're not telling them what to do, you're not trying to like talk down to them or patronize them or something like that. You should rather than I should. Yeah, like you just ask you. And also, like, by the way, this is something that's in general true. Whenever you're having a conversation with somebody and you ask the person questions about what they're telling you about, they're going to like that because it means that you're paying attention to what they're saying. So that's a little life hack. I'm not the best looking guy out there. So if I'm talking to a girl, I need all the help that I can get. And let me tell you something, guys. Asking them about their interests and asking follow-up questions about those interests, it's like a life hack. It's like a cheat code. It works really well.
About this thing.
You'd be shocked.
It's not my place to give her advice in her own field. I know nothing about. The only position I know is someone who doesn't have That is
in my opinion, I think that if you base your self-esteem off of any sort of voluntary reaction from other people, you're only going to make yourself unhappy. So if you base your self-esteem around people liking you, if you base your self-esteem around people perceiving you as anything, what you're going to end up doing is eventually running into a wall with that and making yourself unhappy. That's my opinion. You've got to have your own self-image that is defined by you, it's reinforced by you, and it may be enhanced by other people, but it can stand on its own.
You did nothing to learn. You were simply born with it. People who fixate on their own intelligence, they usually have nothing going on in their lives that they can rest their self-esteem.
Well, this is another thing too, is that a lot of these pretend smart people on Reddit, there's a reason why they're on Reddit. It's because they're not smart. Like, and you can see this in any topic that, like, you know a lot about. Go on to Reddit and read about people talking about it. And these are a bunch of retards that have no idea what they're saying. Yeah, the actual thing, yeah, exactly. You have a job? Exactly, yeah. A lot of these people are just morons.
Hello. That's their one pillar they rely on. If you threaten them, if you shake them by being smarter than them or undermining
This
their
is the same reason why a lot of Redditors insist that every streamer is stupid. It's because it creates, and you have to understand that the perception around this and insulting and calling other people dumb,
That's like
the reason why they do it is actually in order to protect their own ego.
I mean, like,
they care about being perceived or seen as somebody who's intelligent, and because they care about that
like,
so much, they don't like
bullshit like you're doing on the internet.
Let's say like,
and like
they
nothing
don't
really
like to
fucking
be
matters.
seen as somebody who
Like
is
it's both kind of the same, you know what I mean? Like,
so if you go on LSF or you go on one of these other like subreddits, you're going to have all these people that are talking down about like content creators, or talking down about like musicians, or talking down about anybody who's successful. Why is it that they have a bucket and a crabs in a bucket mentality for anybody who's successful? Well, the reason why is because the moment that somebody is successful that they perceive to be less intelligent than them, what happens to them is now they feel like, wait a minute, if they're smarter than I am and they're successful, well, why the fuck am I not successful? That's reaching? I don't think so. I think that almost all people in the way that they act is in some way or another related to them. It's a reality check, it is. That's the reason why they do it, it's coping.
They will hate you. That's the one thing they have in life. Never undermine it or shake it. Never point out how they are wrong. They will. And what we can learn from this is one, we should not rest ourselves.
100%.
We need multiple things. If you say something to you're going to think about it. That is the key. Where it's really yeah. I might be weird, but I'm not weird.
Yeah. Stop. That's the way that we start responding to the videos. Exactly. Because they don't Legally, bro, that's right.
But I'm very confident of it, and everybody needs to hear this. One, people do not care at all how you appear. Nobody cares about how you talk about yourself or how you frame yourself to be in front of them. Or
absolutely. Fucking absolutely. Yes, nobody gives a fuck. Very true.
Things that are so designed to impress other people. Nobody's paying attention when you go on these long monologues. People block it out. They start to daydream. Nobody cares about you.
I've had people like this, and so there's been like meetings that I've been in, and there's always been people that are like this. And I know that like whenever they start going, I will watch like the call, and the amount of people will be like, Like, no, please, please, no, not again.
How you make them feel.
Yeah,
and also what
yes,
people
exactly.
care about and love people who make themselves feel good. What is actually valuable is the skill of making other people feel smart.
That's right.
Love, value, happy. People will love you.
And also to help them. Like if you're smart and you know how to solve somebody's problem, and you can solve the problem, they're gonna like that. They're gonna like that a lot. So, and that's really the issue, is that if you really know what the hell you're talking about with something, you can help somebody and be like, yeah, I actually know a lot about this. I can help you. Do you want me to help you? And they say, yeah. It's like, all right, this is what you got to do. And a lot of people have like one or two things that they do know a lot about. Now, maybe the one thing you know a lot about is Pokemon, so you have a lot of options. But every once in a while, somebody might not know how to use EU4. That's where you come in. That's when you're fucking ready, okay? And you don't need to be that guy for everything, man. And so that's it. Gotta catch them all. Exactly, yeah, you don't need to be that guy for everything. You don't have to know everything.
That is what is extremely important. And also, being a valuable asset in general.
Yes.
If you've supplied value to people, you give to them in whatever way you can. People
Absolutely.
will love you and value for that. And oddly enough, if you're supplying value to people, they oftentimes view you as intelligent.
Yes.
If you want to be seen as intelligent, just be competent.
This is hands down one of the most powerful AI platforms for digital marketing, similar web.
Welcome to the new era of Rust. Yup, today is Force Wipe, and with it has come one of the most game-changing updates Rust has ever seen. And no, there's no fancy new monuments or weapon. Instead, the very core of the game's progression will never be the same again. For better or worse, the world is changing, and I, as the humble solo, must evolve with it. Can a solo still survive official Rust, or are the end times on the horizon? Ooh, can I get lucky? Maybe find a green card? I'm pretty sure there is a spawn in here. Ah, it would normally be there. It's gone. Shame. Oh my gosh, it's already turning nighttime. So the Force Wipe update literally just came out about 15 minutes ago, and it obviously takes time for everyone to download it. And so even though I'm 15 minutes late into Wipe, most players will still be updating and installing. So it is fairly quiet right now, but it won't be for long. And I don't know why it's already turning nighttime. That is very frustrating. I hope that's not part of new Rust. Alright, now some of you may not actually know what has come with this new update, so let me explain. And it all comes down to the barriers of...
Yes. I'm going to spend the rest of the video elaborating, as you may guess, but if you want a short answer and want to go do something else, in my humble opinion, EU5 is actually good. But in the...
Let's just talk about the immigration thing. The way it looks is horrific. When you're just arresting people in front of their kids and just normal, regular people that have been here for 20 years, that everybody who has a heart can't get along with that.
I guess I don't have a heart. I'm totally okay with it. I think we should do it more. Just because you have your kids with you doesn't mean that you're immune to consequences. Yeah. It's emotional manipulation.
Now, everybody who has a heart sees that and goes, that can't be right. That can't be right. That can't be the only way to do this.
Right.
Because
well, the other way to do it would be to have closed the borders ahead of time, and that way it would have never been an issue. Anytime that somebody gets apprehended by the police for committing a crime or doing something wrong, they're separated from their family or from their kids. If they're with their kids, it's not like this is some kind of get out of jail free card. You still go to jail. It doesn't even make sense. This is like, it's totally illogical in every other application of this rule.
you have to think, look, yeah, we have to have a border. Yes, it should have been secure. Yes, they should make sure you know who everybody is before they get in.
Yeah.
But when people been here for 20 years, come on. Man, that's crazy. Like,
yeah.
I agree. It's crazy. How are you here for 20 years? You break the law for 20 years. You can't figure out how to get a visa. You can't go through the immigration process. You can't do anything. How does that make any sense? How is it that these people can disrespect the laws? And also, a lot of these people are doing identity theft. They're doing other bullshit. They're paying some taxes. They're not paying other taxes. I wonder, like, yeah, stealing an American's job in a lot of cases. Yes, and it's just insane. So, yeah, I don't know what to say. It's crazy, man. I think you've been saying this for years. Yeah, exactly. So I think that this argument works, but it works in the opposite direction. How is it that these people have been here for 20 years, but they couldn't figure out how to get any form of citizenship or residence in the country? Like, what are you doing?
Find a way. If they've been productive members of society for 20 years, no criminal record, they worked the entire time, they paid taxes, find them a pathway to citizenship. Find a way where you can do this.
Nope. Because if you do that, then you provide a reward structure around people breaking the law. If you ever have a system that rewards people for breaking the law, you've created a system that rewards people for breaking the law. Why is it that a person who intentionally disrespects and breaks the law of a country gets to get moved to the front of the immigration the immigration line, and get made a citizen or a resident of the country? How is it fair to everybody else who didn't break the law that the people that did get first chances over them? How is it fair to them? This is, and I think this is the problem that a lot of people have, is that they always think about things from a very, very limited perspective, and they never think about it with other people and how they're being treated. Well, then why not change the law? Well, because I agree with the law. I think that you shouldn't just randomly let people in the country. I agree with it. I think that's the way the rules should be, and I don't see any, I see no logical reason otherwise. Yeah, point exactly. Been waiting a turn. Yeah, of course, right? So if I rob banks for 20 years and I get caught on my 21st year, I shouldn't get in trouble? Yeah, it's just, nothing about this makes sense at all. And I think that really, this is what's happened. I think this is what's very clearly happened, is that people like Joe Rogan, Theo Vaughn, a couple of these other podcasters, they are afraid of the negative optics of, arresting people in front of their kids or something like that. And they don't want to be seen as that kind of a person. But really, it's not about the optics. Anybody, if you're ever worried about the optics of something, you've now become manipulated by a person who wants to take advantage of you. Because you've effectively given your ability to decide your own fate away to somebody else who oftentimes doesn't want you to succeed. So really, whenever you're caring about how will people who don't like me perceive what I'm doing? Well, they're going to try to make it look well. They're going to try to make it look bad. That's the real reason. You're afraid of optics or afraid of Democrats? I mean, I'm sure some of them are, but I think there's more than that too.
What to do with this.
You're making this argument, you made it multiple times, didn't play credit card loans multiple times? Yeah, well, no, that was my mom, to be fair. That was my mom, and she did get away with it. Yeah, you're right. But, what I'm saying is that, and also I think credit card companies are total fucking scams to begin with. They're scammers, and so fuck them. I don't think that it's a scam that you can't come into the United States unless you fill out paperwork. And so, yeah, it's a little bit different. And, gosh, there are no hiding places around here, nowhere I know. Yeah, of course. And so that's really the difference to me. But either way, I mean, you're trying to make this like a personal thing for me or whatever. Why are you attacking me? Shouldn't you be attacking what I'm saying rather than trying to draw this, just completely dishonest comparison that doesn't have anything to do with what I'm saying? Why are you even bringing it up in the first place? So this is not a principled stance? No, not really. I mean, my principles, so this is the way that I look at it. I don't derive my morality or ethics from the law. I think that to a certain extent you have to follow the law, but my morality and what I think is right and wrong doesn't really have to do with the law. So there are a lot of things that I think are okay that illegally are not okay, and vice versa. So there are some laws that I agree with and other laws that I don't agree with. And the ones that I do agree with, I think that we should enforce, and the other ones I don't think that we should enforce that much. So it's really just that simple. And the only difference between, I think, me and a lot of other people is that I'm pretty open about this. I'm pretty open about this, and I think that this is a more honest conversation to have. But I don't think people want to have honest conversations. I think that they want to hold on to optics and try to, you know, create these weird little gotchas and stuff like that. That's it. So it's okay to not care about illegal immigrant law? No, I agree with you, but I think that's a stupid position. So,
that's why.
And I'm going to pull up your message here. Give me. I'll pull it up and I'll respond. So, do you think that we should let illegal aliens into the country without checking who they are? Do you think we should do that? Do you think that's a good decision for the country? Then you're just wasting my time. You're wasting my time with an argument that you don't even have. You don't even think this. You're just arguing for no reason. Like, it's just, what are you doing? Anyway, let's go ahead. We'll move on, right? That was fast. I mean, like, I have no problem with somebody that wants to, like, debate on something or whatever. There is no argument. Every country has borders.
Just keep terrorists and cartel members from getting across the border with drugs that kill 100,000 people a year.
Yes.
Okay, but also have a fucking heart. Because if you don't, you're not going to.
The thing is with this is that there are a lot of it is human trafficking as well. And tremendous amounts of human trafficking happen. And because you're allowing people that are already here to have a path to citizenship if they're found to be here, then you've also created another reward structure through a second-order effect of human trafficking. Because now, if somebody who is already in the United States is able to get a fast-track path to citizenship, that makes it all the more important to find somebody that will traffic you into the United States. And this is the problem, I think, with a lot of this logic here, is that it's not logic. It's just emotion. It's an emotional reaction based off of something that you see, rather than thinking out what the right thing is and the best thing is for the most people. And I think that it's very easy for somebody to see a YouTube video or somebody to see a clip that's upsetting or emotionally touching to them, and then decide that, actually, you know what, let's just get rid of this rule. But there's always a lot of times secondary effects and sometimes other direct effects that are just not considered with why these rules exist in the first place.
Get anybody on your side. If you're doing this stuff publicly, throwing women to the ground, handcuffing people, just for existing on the wrong side of the dirt. Not a criminal, not the only crime they ever committed was coming over here as a kid. They probably didn't even know what the fuck was going on. You know, a lot of kids got snuck across when they were born in Mexico.
And that's the reason why you can't let them be kids. That's the reason why you can't give them citizenship. Because if you do, you just created across the border. That's the reason why you can't do it. Now you have just created an incentive to do this.
Grown up their entire life in America, they can't even speak Spanish.
Yep, this is the era of feeling is upon us. It's an emotional argument. And too much empathy means the cartels end up profiting? Well, I don't necessarily think so. I mean, like, the cartels are always going to find ways to make money, etc. But Rogan might be a sellout now. I don't think Rogan's a sellout. I think that he's just looking at it from a perspective that's incomplete. Like, this is not really that crazy of an opinion, in my opinion. Like, it's not that insane. But and people say this all the time. People are not Nazis because they think what I think. He's not a fucking sellout because he's saying this. It's just, I just don't agree with it. I don't agree with it, and I think that this is very. There's like a lot of like short-term or like face value empathy that people like this have. And I think that face value empathy falls apart whenever you investigate the consequences of it. And I think that the problem is that a lot of these clips are, number one, they're intentionally misleading. So, for example, the woman that was thrown to the ground, the example that he's using, this woman was federally assaulted. She was assaulting federal officers. Should a federal officer allow himself to be assaulted, period? Should a person allow themselves to be assaulted, period? I think the answer to that is no. I don't think that they should allow themselves to be assaulted. And I think the answer is never. Never should anybody expect to allow themselves to be assaulted. And whenever she's running away, she's hysterical, she's screaming at him, and he pushes her on the ground. Yes, obviously that's what happens. If she didn't want that to happen, she shouldn't have been grabbing and screaming at him for the last probably 5 minutes. Like, why is it always on the person who is responding to violence to be the one who measures their response? It's really the person who's doing it in the first place who's wrong, so you should look at why are they doing it. Forcing your kids to be there? Yeah, 100% with you. She deserved it. Yeah, you shouldn't have done it in the first place. I think he separates himself since Elon Musk took business from Trump. I can't read Joe Rogan's mind. I have no idea. But like, and I'm not trying to. I'm responding to what he's saying here. And if people stop allowing their emotions to overtake common sense, so yeah. I think when it comes to retroactive people in the States for years, there could be a merit-based system that determines the appropriate course of action for them. Well, yeah, and I agree with you, but I think that the first step to that merit-based system would be self-deportation. So, for example, I think that if someone say, hey, I'm here for a really long time, I've left, but I'd like to have a chance to come back, I think that's totally fine. But the issue is that whenever you're not even leaving, I would not support anything that would give an advantage to a person who is a criminal and who has abused and taken advantage of the system. Because not all of them are kids. Some of them are kids, but categorically you can't make decisions based off of the... Like, every law and every rule is going to have a certain amount of collateral damage of people that are affected by it disproportionately. That happening is not a justification to just simply get rid of the rules. It is still an indirect incentive, exactly. And Trump has that as a rule right now. So if you self-deport, you can still have the chance to come back to America if you follow the procedure. But nobody has a right to just simply skip the line. There's never any world where somebody has a right to skip the line. You can't do it in the supermarket, you can't do it at the bank, you can't do it at a hospital, you can't do it in an emergency room. They have to call you in. You can't just run in there and say, I need to see a doctor. That's it. And so it seems like you didn't listen to your father's deathbed at all. You didn't listen to your father at his deathbed? What is wrong with you?
The fuck?
This is a, what, do you think my dad support, like, so I'm going to pull you up, like, what a weird thing to say. What do you think that my dad thought about this? So we shouldn't let ISIS, yeah, so why are you bringing up my dad? I mean, don't you think that's weird to say that?
Cringe.
I mean, because why would you even say that? I mean, do you think that my dad was on like his deathbed and he was trying to explain to me why we should have let illegal aliens into the country? What are you thinking? See, and I think that really this person is a great example of what I'm talking about. Is because this person is completely ruled by their emotions. They're completely ruled by their emotions, and they made the mistake that I am too. So they're trying to use an emotional tool to take advantage of me and to try to make me disagree with myself. So, but I think that interpretation is an indicator of their thinking. That's the way that it works. Yeah, exactly. It's just a Look at the name, Haku is a ladyboy. I don't know about that. I mean, that's a bit much. But like, what my point is that there's a lot of manipulation that goes on. And the moment that you allow people like that to control you is the moment that you will completely lose anything that you have. It's grossly manipulative and wrong. Yes, exactly. And it's AI, it doesn't think. I mean, maybe you're right. Yeah, I have no idea. And so his comment was inappropriate. Why'd you ban the previous guy? Because he was... anybody who's going to go into my stream and argue with me about something that they don't even think is just wasting my time. I don't like having fake arguments with people that don't even believe something in order for them to get attention on stream. I think that it's a waste of my time, and it's a waste of everybody else's time too. And so unless you actually have a belief system you want to advocate in a respectful way, then I don't want to hear your devil's advocate argument. You don't even believe your own argument. Think about that. You don't even believe what you're saying. Why are you saying it then? It's a waste of time. So what horrible thing to say? Yeah, exactly. And so yeah, retards advocate. Yeah, bring up fathers, dipshit. Well, it doesn't. That's not the point, right? It's just an idiot. Who cares? But the point is that by doing so, what he's doing is he is indicating.
Let's just talk about
the pause here. He's indicating what his value system is. His value system, his currency's value is emotions. He wants to manipulate a conversation emotionally. He wants to control this emotionally. He doesn't want to think about this logically or rationally. That's what it is. And so anyway, I'll show this. And I said before that people would never accept them back. And this is what this guy is saying. Fuck this worthless, unfunny, cowardly dipshit and every other dipshit who thinks he's clever or worth listening to. You don't get to play the liberal after you helped elect that pedo. He does. And so there we go again and again and again. Everybody is going to hate you for this. The bridges are burned. The boats are burned. There's no going back. You've already decided what you've done. Like, if you supported Trump and you were advocating for him and fucking endorsing him, these people will never forgive you. They'll always hate you. You're never going to get back in their good graces. To the extent that you might a little bit, that's only so they can use you for their own advantage. You will never be back on their good side. They will never like you again. It is over, and it's been over, and it will be over. That's it. I don't know why they don't realize that. They're delusional. That's how you convert people back to Democrats. You don't understand going square shirt is a detriment to their own lives. Oh, it's because they're emotional and aggressive. And a lot of these people don't really care about the issues either. They just care about using the issues as a weapon to attack other people. Hey, bro, have you listened to this vote? No, it's not a... I mean, I really mean this. Like, it's just something, right? I mean, like, why am I going to care about what some idiot says? Like, I wish more people had this. Wow, somebody on the internet said something that was mean. Who gives a shit? Who gives? I just stopped. Yeah, what are you even thinking? Why are you even thinking about it still? Who cares? So anyway, I agree with the 90% of the arguments. The immigration one, I'll pull up one more person, and I'll go ahead and I'll listen to like what. So, do you think that we should allow illegal aliens into the country without any sort of, like, you know, checking them or anything like that? Emotional manipulation is a huge tool of cults as well. Most people that want to activate to support the law, they want to take you to a lower form of thinking in order to change what you believe. I think borders should be closed, but the ones already in should be integrated into society. So you think that we should give people that broke the law and intentionally disrespected our country an advantage in immigration over people that have followed the law and tried to go through the immigration process themselves? You think we should give people that are in the country illegally already priority over them? Obviously not. Okay, so then well, if you're not in favor of that, wait a minute. So if you're not in favor of that, then how could you advocate? Obviously not, but the sistering friend it's also possible to anyone to get to America without crossing the border or violating law. So you think that, like, let me just look it up. How many people immigrate to the U.S. per year legally? So over 1 million people lived in it. So at some time, how are 1 million? And also, here's another question that I have. Why is it our country's responsibility and obligation in order to provide the entire world with an easy way to immigrate into our country? What obligation do we have to the rest of the world to allow them to come here? Why do we have an obligation to make an easy immigration system for people to come into our country? Like, take a step back and ask yourself that question. True, I can't argue it's emotionally based thinking for the most part, but it just feels wrong putting fathers that didn't do any crime in America just to deport them. I don't know. Well, they did do crime. They shouldn't be here. And also a lot of people that, and this is also a lot of people don't understand, is that a lot of the people that are here illegally do actually engage in crime regularly. They engage in identity theft. They engage in other forms of misrepresentation of themselves. They don't maybe pay taxes in the same way that they should. Like, for example, if you're an illegal alien and you're working here under the table, you're probably not paying into Social Security, which means that also your employer isn't paying into Social Security either. Not every illegal alien is paying taxes. So by allowing people to come into the country illegally, you're also creating a second-order effect of increasing the demand for stolen identities and fake IDs and other forms of fraudulent documentation. Because many of them actually do commit crimes, it's just that they're not committing crimes like robbery or murder. Well, I don't know, and you can see it is emotionally, it feels wrong. Well, it's not about how things feel. Shouldn't, like, how does that feel wrong to you? But us having the resources, because the logic, right? The logic very clearly is that the person that's immigrating into the country is now going to have a better life because they're in the country. How is it fair that we allocate resources to improving the life of a random foreigner over improving the life of a homeless veteran? I don't view that as an emotionally sound decision. I don't see that as a morally good or emotionally, congruent decision. Because I think that we do live in a world of opportunity cost. Everything is a zero-sum environment. There's only so much money, there's only so many resources, there's only so many things. Scarcity exists with everything. So whenever you're applying this to one person, you're choosing not to apply it to someone else. And I just can't see that being the right decision. Why veteran? Because they they directly serve the country. If they do crimes, they should be in jail no matter what they are. It doesn't matter if they're legal or illegal. Well, yeah, I mean, I think that's obviously true. I mean, everybody agrees with that. Yeah, and yeah, of course. And also, like, you have, and I do think this is something that's true, is that I think that if your family, like, if you're an American citizen, your parents are American citizens, I think that the country has an obligation to you to take care of you. And I know people might not agree with this.
By the way, the reason I'm playing video content on the background,
I do think the country has an obligation to take care of you
while I'm live streaming is because it's hard to focus on the game and do commentary at the same time. I could, it's just I need to,
your grandfather paid taxes into the same government that right now is reallocating your money to some other foreign fucking government or to some foreigner instead of you. And I consider that a betrayal. I think that is a betrayal. It's a fundamental betrayal. And it's a betrayal that's done in the disguise of empathy, but I actually think that it's the opposite. So that's my viewpoint. And so a lot of these opinions that I have, and this is one of the issues that I have too, is that I think that a lot of people attack me and they say that I'm not empathetic or whatever or something like that. I think that I'm one of the only people that is. I do. I think nobody else is actually empathetic. They don't really think about how things are. They just act based off of how they feel at that moment. They don't try to actually improve the lives of anybody. They don't try to look at what's right or what's wrong, other than just the surface value, immediate, instant opinion they have. So yeah, and that's it. You see, and I think that's why they hate me. Is because I'm one of the only people that can see. Many other people don't call that out. But I can see it because I know that because, again, like, I can kind of do that myself. And that's why people hate me.
Hey everyone, Bannerlord is the dream of every RPG, knight, and strategy fan. From simple peasants to mercenaries, you become a mercenary and then a king. You command armies in medieval battle.
What the fuck?
Europa Universalis 5 is rapidly approaching release, and before it comes out, I want to make an impressions video from the perspective of someone with a measly 28
I'm not gonna. I'll leave.
I'm primarily a Crusader Kings 3 and Victoria 3 player, with EU4 being in 3rd place on my list of favorite Paradox games. Hey, that'd be a fun video to make sometime. Anyway, EU5, when I first heard of it, I assumed would be a lot like EU4, and in many ways it is. I avoided a lot of the dev diary content, not for lack of interest in the game, but because I feared kind of ruining it for myself before getting my hands on it. From what I heard, the game had an economy with pops, and it was an extremely detailed world. It sounded like some kind of mashup of Victoria 3 and Europa Universalis 4, which certainly sounded promising. I went into the game expecting something like that, and after playing 69 hours, I can firmly say that EU5 is significantly different from what I've seen in Europe. EU5 has pops like Victoria 3, it has movable standing armies like EU4, it has antagonism, which is basically expansion of EU4, it has markets and goods with changing prices based on an equilibrium of demand and supply like Victoria 3. Nonetheless, the game actually carries significantly more relation to Imperator Rome, in my opinion, than either of the games. It even in one aspect borrows from Hearts of Iron 4, at least in my opinion. I'll expand on those comparisons in a moment here, but before I do, I should mention that being only 69 hours into the game, I don't have the most experience with it. Classic Paradox grand strategy joke, 69 hours just completing the tutorial type thing, and I've got to say, yeah, I feel like I've only just started to really get into the game after this many hours. With that said, my thoughts and opinions are subject to significant change because the game will be different on release than it is right now, and because even after 69 hours, there is still much to learn and uncover. I also should add that I'm not allowed to show any EU5 footage that isn't already public, so that means this video's visual aspect will be footage from whatever game we're discussing in comparison rather than any EU5 footage. In order to organize my impressions, I want to cut this video into chapters based on what other Paradox game that EU5 compares to. So essentially, a Victoria 3 section, an EU4 section, an Imperator section, a Hearts of Iron section, and even a Crusader Kings section, because yes, even CK2 or 3 can be compared to EU5 if you ask me. The lion's share of this video is about EU5's comparison to Victoria 3 and EU4, but I'll include the other games just for completion's sake, I suppose. With that, let's begin with the Victoria 3 comparison, since to me, the economy is the most obviously new feature of EU5. EU5's economic systems, I think, can be best summarized as an arcadey version of Victoria 3's economics. In Victoria 3, money is generated through buildings that can buy and sell goods, and every dollar is accounted for, whether it be the cost of buying guns for an army, or the extra sales of paper for a new university. Every single bit of cash ends up either in a capitalist's hands, in a business's cash reserves, in the government's gold reserves, or in the hands of a pop as a wage, which they then spend. Victoria 3 makes a few assumptions about human behavior to make that happen, such as assuming that no pop will ever hoard money, and that money cannot be inflated or deflated in value, and so on. In this sense, Victoria 3 is a very tight and meticulous game. I know people have a lot of misgivings about it, but the thing that makes Victoria 3 for it's that its economy is ridiculously detailed. Europa Universalis 5 is not. EU5 is the significantly more just whatever economic system. There are no wages, there are just input and output needs. There's also a whole lot of magic money, and that's best represented through the government buildings. Most buildings which give manpower, like armories for example, require weapons as an input good. But so as to not make the game horrifically painful, the armory will only
kind of
have
a good
to
easy
for
for
you
Spain.
and your income, pay 20% of the cost
England's
of the input goods
territory
while
is so
still
far
consuming
removed
100% of
this
the
one
input
down
goods
here
that it's
in
asking
Aquitaine.
for. That's a magic 80% of the input goods being purchased from the weapons workshops with magic money that doesn't exist. That, of course, is fine, at least for me, because EU5 isn't trying to be Victoria 3. It's not trying to be a proper economic simulation. It's trying to have a semblance of balance, and in return for that, magic money must be created. I get it. It's also similar with regards to taxes. All buildings are owned by one of a handful of estates, and you tax a percentage of the estate's income with a slider that you set. Most of the good stuff is owned by the burghers, so you tax the burghers a lot. Most of your population is a bunch of peasant commoners, so despite their extremely small profits, their immense size compared to the burghers puts them in a similar running with regards to income. The nobles pay taxes too, but they don't tend to make a ton of money. Instead, their role is to make demand for the stuff the burghers make. All that fine cloth you're making, who's buying it? It's the nobles in your market. The nobles indirectly make you richer by their demand for goods, but directly don't tend to generate huge taxes. To give you an idea of how much nobles consume, the base demand for fine cloth for a noble pop is 0.2. That's for one noble. For a burgher, the base demand on fine cloth is 0.025, a little bit more than 10%. To me, it was a pretty quick gameplay loop to figure out. The nobles in the nation across your market are like your upper bound of consumption, so you can produce as many goods as you have nobles to consume them, plus your ability to export goods to other nobles in other markets, which we'll talk about soon. Your peasants produce the raw materials that your burghers can buy to make their goods. Peasants can promote to being burghers or nobles depending on your values, and they'll promote at different speeds depending on stuff like having a university and your stability and other such stats. Pop promotion is much simpler, and it's inevitable in EU5. The only thing you influence is how many pops each month promote. There are only really 3 qualifications in the game: nobles, burghers, and clergymen. Technically, peasants can promote to laborers, but laborers are also part of the lower class, so the only difference is whether or not they produce some kind of subsistence for themselves or work a job at a building, except for a handful of buildings which do employ peasants, but I digress. The point is, there's no qualifications or division of classes into other sorts of jobs. There's also a compression of what standard of living represents. In EU5, pops have a satisfaction number from 0 to 100. The satisfaction number is increased if the goods that pops consume are low in price. They don't consume more of them to account for the low price like in Victoria 3. There's no scaling up of standard of living, nor are there wages that can be based on such a concept, so your incentive to make a consumer economy is just percentage. The noble will always demand the same amount of stuff no matter how fast rich the nobles get. Instead, you drive up consumption purely by getting more. That aside, my main point of impression with regards to EU5's relation to Victoria 3, at least economically speaking, is a simplified arcade system. That includes trade. In Victoria 3, trade centers generate profits for their owners as expected, and that income can be reinvested in the investment pool, or tax, goods, and so on. In EU5, trade profits are split right from the budget as trading income. Again, simple, to the point, arcadey. Trade is a system by which supply is transferred to another market, and the difference in price multiplied by the number of goods is a small consideration for the cost of logistics of the trade route. In EU5, your options with regards to protectionism are much lower, beyond simply embargoing the nations you want to stop influencing your market. There are neither tariffs nor subventions. EU5 does feature other ways to influence trade though, such as using your fleet to increase naval presence, which gives trade advantage. This is essentially what protecting trade was back in EU4, as you set your fleet to patrol the sea routes that cover the trade route. Ultimately, I elected to automate my trade pretty often because it's got that problem that Victoria 3 before the trade center rework came to be. Trade is constantly changing, and your routes will invalidate and be really annoying and micro-intensive to keep going. Doubly unfortunately, at least on the patches I've been playing on, the automatic trading AI is absolutely awful, and in the early game much of your income will come from trade until you get enough buildings going that you can rely on taxes. The trade AI was especially broken when I first got programs in the game, as the AI didn't do any imports, only exports, so every nation was only exporting its goods. That means that certain markets which lacked essential goods would, without player intervention, have to pray that another nation would conveniently send an export of what they needed, instead of explicitly making it. Pretty sure that's now fixed on the patch that I have, but the point is that although trade is automatable, it is very bad to do so in comparison to doing it yourself. I want to circle back a little bit and talk about investment pool. In Victoria 3, the main driver of most economies is the private investment pool, which is fueled by the excess profits of the ownership class of a nation. In EU5, there is a very small bit of private investment in that estates make money and use that money to create things. The difference is that the buildings they build are often unique to them and can't be built by the player. For example, the nobles might build toll castles, or something named like that, I forget its name, but essentially a building whose only outputs are to increase the noble estate's power in that state. I haven't actually checked if those buildings have any inputs, but if they don't, then they essentially do nothing for the economy besides empower an estate. That's really cool if you ask me, since there are ways to destroy those buildings with the parliament, which is more of a topic in comparison for EU4. Back to the investment pool, only really do the burghers make buildings that you would actually want to see built, and sometimes the clergy do too. Private investment is a very small part of the economy, at least in my experience, and so a low tax strategy would probably be dead in the water. EU5 is a significantly more extractive game than Victoria 3. It's entirely unviable to run a debt-based economy in EU5 compared to Victoria 3, where it's in fact the norm and the meta for any recognized nation. The last thing I want to talk about with regards to economics is the level of money deletion in EU5. If you haven't played Victoria 3, then you might not be aware of what money deletion is, but essentially, at certain points in Victoria 3, money can vanish from the economy. The most blatant example is from government dividend efficiency. Let's say a business generates £1,000 in profit, but it's government owned and the government dividend efficiency is 50%. The government gets £500 and the other £100 will simply disintegrate as if they never existed. No pocket gets it, no cash reserve, no investment, nothing. In Victoria 3, there are very few regulations. In EU5, there are. The cost of raising stability does not purchase any goods. The cost of the court has no goods. The court maintenance is goods. Those sliders simply destroy money. When you pay 10 gold to fort maintenance, no masonry or lumber was purchased. The money is just gone. Of course, in a more arcadey system like EU5, there's not so much of a worry about that. But it does mean that while in Victoria 3, war actively stimulates the economy, in EU5, wars in your market don't change the economy very much. If you're playing in the Cologne market and the HRE, you won't see goods changing in price because everyone's raising their maintenance. For that reason, economies are very stable in EU5, except for food. When armies are raised, they stockpile food into themselves to use for supply. That will shock the price of food, as for a moment prices skyrocket to account for the new demand, and then within a few months settle down again. Markets have food stockpiles though, and in most cases the stockpile of food in the market will cover the surge of demand from war. In cases where it doesn't though, well, get ready to import some food. So with that, I think I've explained the key differences in economics of Victoria 3 and EU5, and when it comes to how I feel about them, it's natural for me to grumble about a less detailed system, but at the same time, I found it refreshing to have this more chill, more arcadey, and more direct system. In Victoria 3, you can have a building with huge profits, and you might only see a benefit from it because its owners contribute to your investment pool, which lets you make more buildings, and it's all very much so covered in layers of consequences. In EU5, a high profit building contributes money to an estate, and you tax the estate's income a percentage based on your sliders. Boom. Profits create direct, into your monthly balance income. There's something nice about that simplicity. I like the EU5 systems, only because of the kind of game EU5 is. It's not Victoria 3, so its economic shortcomings aren't actually a problem. The issue that I think will come up is the weird balancing. There's a curious upward spiral of consumption when it comes to government buildings. I mentioned earlier that armories, for example, consume 100% of their shown input goods, but the government only pays for 20% of them. The other 80% is just magically paid for from nothing. Well, the weapon workshops that make the goods that armories demand are still profitable enterprises owned by the burghers. If you tax the burghers enough, it's possible that you can build armories which are meant to balance your budget each month, and via the magic demand they generate, end up with more money each month than what you're paying those buildings around. Nonetheless, it won't feel like that's what you're doing. When you look at your expenses, it'll just say building expenses, armory, minus 20 ducats, or something like that. And yet, if you were to look into all your weapons workshops, you'd see that they're significantly more profitable because of all the demand in your market being generated by the armories. You'd realize that these armories are actively paying you. This is why magical money from thin air can be a problem, and right now I absolutely predict an EU5 strategy where you stack enough tax efficiency and burgher tax to make a military-industrial complex which actively creates money by consuming weapons. And here's the thing, that sounds great to me. I mean, you're limited by the building cap, so you'd eventually run out of places to build armories based on your population in the places you're building them, so you know, it is limited by your population eventually, but I don't know, I kind of like this arcadey nature. I didn't even talk about it, but tax efficiency just straight up generates money from nothing. If you have 20% tax efficiency, and you tax, let's say, 10 ducats from the burghers, you'll actually receive 12 ducats in your income, but the burghers will still only lose 10. That's just 2 free ducats from the void brought into existence. That sounds bad, but it's kind of a power trip in many ways. EU5 hand-waves the complexity of the economy in return for fun modifier stacking, and that's why there's an addition to the EU4 comparison phase here, as modifier stacking really is the name of the game with regards to classic EU4.
Reason we're doing
EU4 is a game all about modifiers
the reason
and bonuses and additive multipliers that take you to ridiculous places.
These provinces
EU4 has always been a game about becoming powerful through the intelligent choices that you make with regards to your build. It's a game which doesn't demand that you pre-plan everything and know what modifiers to stack, but one which rewards it when you do. If you want a disciplined stack, you play Brandenburg into Prussia or something. I don't know, I stopped following EU4's meta years ago, maybe that's old. The point is that modifier stacking is the DNA of Europa Universalis as a franchise, if you ask me, although I haven't played EU3 or anything, so maybe it's different, but regardless, EU5 handles modifier stacking a little bit differently. There aren't any national ideas or idea groups to choose from in EU5. Instead, it goes the imperator route of having this big tech tree, and you sort of define the ethos of your play by what parts of the tech tree you go down. Most nations have special techs unique to them, and that can sort of act as your national ideas maybe. For example, Italian nations get a tech that gives them 20% production efficiency on fine cloth, meaning that if you want to do a fine cloth build, you should probably play in Italy. I think Flanders is a similar unique tech, but I certainly haven't browsed enough of the nations in the game to know off the top of my head what nations are best suited to what. Now, here's a point of friction that I think will immediately rub all the EU4 players the wrong way. It's not immediately obvious what a nation is good at because they don't have national ideas. In EU4, it's obvious that England is a naval nation because of their national ideas, which are visible at a glance. In EU5, you'll have to check England's advancements, their unique technologies, to see that they're a naval power, and even then, you might not get those advancements for a while. For example, the Dutch unlocked polders later in the game, which helped to offset the development penalties in wetlands. There's another advancement they start the game with though, which gives them 5% production efficiency on all buildings for the whole game. Now, I'll be honest with you, I had no idea they started with that advancement until someone else told me in the content creator EU5 Discord. What I'm saying with this is that EU4's national ideas system is still in the game, it's just that it's more hidden away. In terms of idea groups from EU4, they're sort of here. During each era, you pick a set of advancements you want to make available, and those get added into the base advancement tree. That's kind of like picking an idea group, I suppose, but more what corresponds to an idea group in EU5 is simply your choice of where in the tech tree to go. If you know you don't care about the Navy, then just never take any advancements for the Navy. The weird thing about this is that it means you can essentially tech switch with way too much ease. Oh, did you never research a single ship technology? Suddenly need ships for your new overseas empire? Well, just research the newest ship tech for the most up-to-date ship and start building it. In my Holland game, I never researched Barks, the first light ship in the game, because I was more focused on the conquest of the Netherlands and Westphalia. Well, once I started making moves for England, I just researched frigates or whatever the newest light ship was, and now I have the most modern navy available. It reminds me of something like Humankind, if you remember that game. In Humankind, you can take a very militaristic civilization, and in one era change to one that's totally focused on diplomacy, and suddenly, you're specialized in diplomacy now. It's a little jarring, I can feel off. That being said, the intermediary techs between ship types tend to be things like 5% ship morale or navy upkeep down and stuff like that. Little modifiers which, on their own, don't mean much, but if you've been investing in the naval aspects of each era's advancement trees, those will add up into making your navy better than other navies in the game, akin to taking naval ideas in EU4. That can help lessen the whiplash, but to be clear, most of the power for navies and armies is in getting new units. No matter how many diminutive morale bonuses an army has picked up, if they're an era behind by unit type, they will get destroyed. I mentioned it earlier, and I want to harp on it a little bit. EU5 has a content transparency problem. After 69 hours of play, I sort of figured out this dynamic by intuition, but because it's not very obvious or told to you, it can feel like EU5 has taken the diversity of nations in EU4 and flattened them out to be more like Victoria 3. In Victoria 3, most nations play the same, for better or worse. I want to be clear that in EU5, nations play a lot more like EU4 than in Victoria 3, where the modifiers you can stack are based on what's available to those nations in the form of ideas, now rebranded as unique advancements.
Like, you can figure them out, but you take a lot of play hours.
Beyond that, EU5 does feel quite a bit more different from EU4, in that playing tall is a whole lot more complicated. In EU4, playing tall is simple as watching numbers go up and clicking the development button. Well, EU5 playing tall is mostly sitting and watching, but you can put a whole lot more effort into the minutiae of playing tall. You can optimize your trade routes, you have to decide what buildings to make, and you can maximize your playing tall power. Your ability to balance estate power and crime power is way more restricted than in EU4, so you'll really want to be careful about how many estate privileges you give out, and the parliament is extremely impactful. Playing tall in EU5 is something of a must, as playing wide is not nearly as rewarding as it once was. In EU4, conquering a province saw an immediate reward in that although the autonomy was high, the base tax and base production were already benefiting you. Then you core it, you lower the autonomy, you kill the rebels, and that province is contributing to your budget, manpower, sailors, sports limit, everything. Well, now we have this cute little expense called the cost of court. The cost of court is an arbitrary expense which determines your legitimacy or Republican tradition or whatever other resource theocracies might use. If you don't keep the slider on your cost of court expenses high, you'll lose legitimacy, and that will make stability more expensive. With lower stability, which is also a slider that you pick in your expenses, you will lose estate loyalty, and thus estate taxes, and eventually deal with estate rebellions. Now here's the thing. Cost of court, and by extension, cost of stability, is determined by the size of your nation. That means that if you're conquering locations that you can't really get any control in, and thus you can't tax them, you may be actively reducing your income and destabilizing your nation. But here's the kicker. Isn't that basically a form of overextension? If you don't take the time to build up the roads to your new conquests, integrate them, assimilate them, convert them, and get cores on them and so on, then the rising cost of the court will be outscaling the bonus of having these locations, just like the negative impact of overextension from EU4. See, once again, this issue is information transparency. To a new player, this will feel frustrating. I'm being punished for conquering. What is this crap? Is a vibe I can totally see coming from the EU4 people, which might not be expressed by the Victoria 3 crowd. Meanwhile, this is actually an extremely similar system to overextension from EU4, except it's been masked by more complexity. To be clear, in EU5, conquering more land is good, and gaining more territory is a valuable thing. I've never really found myself thinking, I'd be conquering, but it wouldn't help me get more powerful. It would often be something more like, the money I could spend on army maintenance, court costs, and stability costs to conquer isn't as well spent right now as it otherwise could be on a few more fine cloth goods. And the difference between those two lines of thought is, to me, extremely important. In EU4, the alternative to gaining power, if you didn't want to do conquest, was the extremely mind-numbing process of playing tall. You click dev buttons, you lower autonomy, and you stack all the right development modifiers to make it efficient, and even then, you'd always be outpaced by someone playing wide. EU5 answers that problem by making playing tall sometimes more beneficial than playing wide, and giving it a gameplay loop that makes it worthy of your attention. To summarize, a world conquest in EU4 is actually optimal if you don't take the rebels in the process. In EU5, it would only be optimal in a sparse few cases, but it's still a path forward nonetheless. Anyway, the last comparison to EU4 I want to draw is in regards to tag switching. It's absolutely alive and well here, especially because unlike in EU4, you essentially get to keep the ideas from your previous tag when you tag switch. What do I mean? Well, if you're playing Holland, and you search for polders, and then tag switch to Great Britain, which I've done, it's super fun, then you keep the polders advancement, and you get all the Great Britain stuff added to your tree. Here's the limiting factor. Every tag is on a 1 to 4 tier system, and most of the good tags are tier 3. So for example, Britain is tier 3, the Netherlands is tier 2, and Germany is tier 3. That means that if I want to go down a tag switching bonanza as Holland, I can go to the Netherlands, then Britain, then Germany. But at that point, I'm done. Maybe there's an exception for the HRE, Rome, and the Mongols, like was in EU4, but I haven't checked that. Anyway, the point is that tag switching is more powerful, but you can't go down a tier. So if there's another tier 3 tag you want, like say Italy, then you can't form that, and Great Britain. You have to pick one. I really like this system, and for the people who really want to tag switch a ton, just add a game rule or mod that takes away the tier system and everyone gets to be happy. There is one little thing about tag switching that can make it painful, and that's that to switch, your capital has to be in the region that tag is in. So as Holland, I had to move my capital to anywhere in Britain to be able to form Britain. Not a huge deal, but moving your capital is expensive, and I can see it being a pain. Beyond that, I find this to be a great system. It definitely does contribute to EU5's arcadey feel. Obviously, you can limit yourself and play a more grounded game, but I mean, if you really want to stack up bonuses to fine cloth, let's say, then play Flanders, who starts the game with a bonus to fine cloth production, then go tag switch to Italy and get their advancement for a bonus to fine cloth, and then I bet out there somewhere, there's some tier 4 tag with a bonus to fine cloth you can find, but I don't know off the top of my head. Despite the heap of praise I've put up here with regards to the obfuscation of ideas and other such mechanics, it does result in a heap of content for the nations that get it, and then a total drought for those without any. For example, the tag of perm has 0 unique content whatsoever. It's essentially equivalent to a nation with the generic ideas from EU4. The thing is that at least national ideas were like, kind of okay. Now you get nothing. Honestly though, a small issue only for those who want to play the most obscure of tags, something which will likely be fixed by DLCs. And hey, for those of you who don't like the DLC cop-out, I want to be clear that I don't like it either, but it's the truth. If you really want to play Perm, which I understand because they have a unique Komi pagan faith, then you're probably going to want to wait for the big Ural Mountain flavor pack or something. Could you imagine if they actually have something planned for the Arctic Circle nations? They'd be pretty cool. Anyway, that's the EU4 comparison. To summarize, it has a lot of the same systems, but they've been obfuscated by complexity, and that is, to me, a good thing, but it means that the game can be frustrating to learn. It can make you feel like it's something that it's not. This game is very much so the patrician's game, in the sense that it will take a very high IQ to see through its obfuscation. I'm memeing, but I kinda mean it. Cost of Court is perhaps one of the most insidious expenses I've ever seen, as you won't even realize how important it is until you're, I guess, 69 hours in. I've made a joke to Lemon Cake, who has by now played hundreds of hours of the game, that rebellions are a good thing because they cut your cost of court when the rebels steal your locations. And his response, I'm pretty sure, was ironic, but he's right. I am cooking. If you lose a bunch of locations that only contribute to your cost of court without giving much tax base, then yeah, it is good to lose that land. Shout out Lemon Cake, by the way. It's been lots of fun to talk about EU5 with. Same goes to Generalist, who has been the only person nerdy enough to sit and talk with me about EU5's economics. Us Victoria 3 bros gotta stick together. Show them some love for more EU5 and other Paradox content. Anyway, let's move on to a comparison to Crusader Kings 3. This will be a much shorter section, because the comparison to EU5 and Crusader Kings 3 is much longer. Characters. Victoria 3 has them, Crusader Kings 3 has them, EU4 has them, even Hearts of Iron 4 has them, but of course, CK3 has a total monopoly on the mechanics oriented around characters. In EU5, the importance of individual characters of interest, or has been significantly elevated by the cabinet system. Family is very important in EU5 because of how cabinet members influence estates. Every courtier is a member of an estate, but your family members are part of the crown, or the republic, or I guess the theocracy in some cases, estate. You want your crown estate to be powerful because having crown power is like having crown land in EU4 or having tax collection in Victoria 3. It's only a good thing to have more crown power unless you're sacrificing the potential estate privileges you could be giving out by hoarding your crown power. Similarly to how it's bad in EU4 not to sell crown land if you don't really benefit from the bonus crown land very much. Anyway, characters. It's very important to fill out your cabinet with crown members in EU5 if you ask me, because early on one of the best force multipliers for your economy is to get your trade income. Guess what number directly impacts your trade income? That's right, crown power. That means that you'll want your ruler to get married and to raise those kids to be competent so they can serve in the cabinet. The cabinet acts a lot like your council in CK3, except a whole lot more than merit. In CK3, your steward makes more money by merit of just being the steward, and that means you don't necessarily want to give out the steward role to someone that doesn't like you, since you'll be empowering them. In practice, CK3's AI isn't competent enough for that to really matter very much, but I digress, it's another topic for another video. In EU5, you might want to be meritocratic and give out a cabinet spot to the most competent courtier. Maybe that's a noble or a burgher, but, well, you'll be empowering that estate significantly if you do that. The cabinet is worth 25% power in total, with each slot on the cabinet having the power it contributes divided equally. That means that with 4 cabinet spots, each spot will contribute about 6.25 power to their estate of choice. These multipliers are all additive by the way, and since the number of multipliers on your crown power is very small compared to the multipliers on your estates, who get a ton of more privileges, each cabinet member that's from the crown is
I'm gonna link this video to you guys in chat.
One bonus the Ottomans have in EU5 is that on game start, the Sultan has a bunch of brothers with high stats, and those high stats make them great cabinet members, and because of the Sultan's brothers, they actively increase your crown power. This gives the Ottomans a pretty explosive start, as they don't have to spend much time nurturing up a family of cabinet members that can help them to integrate, assimilate, and convert their new conquests. The cabinet is, in many ways, actually what I'd love to see in Crusader Kings 3, a group of power holders that, through their skills, significantly impact the nation. In EU5, you really feel it if you have a low-skill cabinet. In CK3, you could leave all the advisors except the chaplain, since he controls your temples, empty, and you'd barely notice. The big, huge, actually awful flaw with this whole crown estate system is that only family can be part of the crown estate. So brothers, sisters, sons, daughters, uncles, aunts, etc. That's fine for monarchies, but for republics this effectively means that once you've churned through the characters at the start of the game, you're out of crown members. I played as Florence a few times, and I actually really enjoyed checking if the lord I wanted to elect had any family as part of calculations on who to elect. It's no longer just about checking stats and then picking the highest number. A lower stat guy with 3 brothers that can join the cabinet is better than a higher stat guy in many cases. The thing is, republics can't arrange marriages at all of any type. The de Medicis of Florence died out within 2 generations because the historical characters plopped in there didn't get married and didn't have kids. That meant that by about the 1390s or so, I was electing a bunch of randomly generated characters that had no family, and I was seriously inhibited by the lack of a supportive family, nor could I make one due to the inability to do any marriages. The answer was either to allow Republican governments to at least do local marriages, so they can just marry each other and produce families, or to extend the position of the crown estate from just family to family and loyalists. Maybe a character could approach another character and make a bond, like a friendship perhaps, and the character could become a member of the crown estate. In so doing, that would make republics into a fun little web of alliances. You know what, this is a good idea. I'm gonna leave a feedback ticket to Paradox. Back on topic though, yes, characters are more impactful in this game, and you'll want to get them married and having kids and stuff so that you can have a larger pool of talent to put in your cabinet. The cabinet is very important, although in some ways their loyalties are more important than their skills, depending on what stage of the game you're in. Anyway, that's about it. Beyond that, you've got royal marriages to make unions and stuff, but unions are kind of weird and buggy in the current early access patch. You have fewer options to influence succession in EU5, is one big divergence from CK3. For example, I don't think you're able to assassinate someone to try and get a different heir on the throne. Of course, you can get a claim throne CB pretty easily, so if you really want a union and are okay with some war, just force it to happen. Let's talk, very briefly, about Hearts of Iron 4, since I do think there's a little influence from that game here in EU5. Anyone that's played Hoi 4 knows the game has essentially 2 phases. The build up to war, where you put down civilian factories and military factories, do some focuses, get your tech and designer divisions and so on. Then there's the war phase, where you actually play the game. EU4 has that kind of vibe in the beginning. That doesn't mean you can't do any war right in 1337, but rather that you won't likely want to. The first, I'd say, about 20 years of the game, for most tags, is going to be spent on building up a basic enough economy to get a snowball rolling so you can go to war. You totally can go conquering right in the first year of the game, but it just won't be very worthwhile, depending on the situation. Even as the Ottomans, I liked to wait just a moment before going hard, and this is especially true since one of the Ottomans' unique government reforms that reduces their antagonism generation, which is fancy speak for aggressive expansion, doesn't kick in for a few years. The game very clearly wants you to spend at least maybe, 5 or 10 years just building up a little bit, and it's somewhat reminiscent of Hoi 4. You take those early years to decide on your build, to leverage your advantages, to play the diplomatic game, and maybe find some allies that you can use to gang up on someone with some locations you want. In EU4, there are a ton of strategies, which are very effective I should add, that involve declaring war on the very first day that you can, which is 1 month after the game begins. EU5 is much slower paced in that sense. I think it's an intentional choice to have the game feel that way. I think Paradox really wanted players to look at EU5 as a holistic grand strategy game instead of a war game, which EU4 really is. EU4's systems are all geared around war, and in some ways EU5's is too, but EU5 is significantly more of a game that you can play as a real pacifist if you wanted to, although I think that would be an underuse of its systems, unlike Victoria 3. Victoria 3 War could be ripped out of the game entirely, and it'd still be a pretty similar game to what it is now. The other thing that EU5 makes use of, which is
Victoria 3
kind
really
of maybe, if you stretch the logic like Hoi 4,
it's
is
better than
situations.
It was before.
Situations are these
like
scripted sets of events and modifiers that apply to nations and give them options. Things like the 100 Years' War and the Guelph and Ghibelline conflict in Italy are situations. Some situations have more going on than others, like the Ottomans have a situation that can let them get some quick CBs on the other Turkish beyliks, and it gives them bonuses for conquering important Seljuk sites, like the Seljuk coin mints in Sivas and Konya. These are reminiscent to me of focus trees in a very vague sense. These aren't nearly as railroaded as focuses are, but they act as guardrails that help encourage historical outcomes. They lack the permanence of EU4's mission trees, in the sense that situations can end and then life goes on, and some nations, in fact many nations, have no situations at all, but they have that Hoi 4 impact of sort of guiding the game towards certain events. No matter what happens, England and France will enter the 100 Years' War. France and the Pope will fight over Avignon, and the Ottomans will begin their conquest of Anatolia because of these situations. The problem right now is that situations are very unreliable and tend not to push the AI hard enough towards certain historical outcomes. I've only very rarely seen the Ottomans conquer Constantinople before 1500, and in many cases I've never seen them conquer it at all. And that's because their situation isn't enough of a pushing force for the AI to really get its ass into gear and become the menace of the Near East the Ottomans ought to be. Anyway, like I said, this section is very short, and that's because there really isn't much comparison to be had between EU5 and 44. For one last comparison, I want to talk about EU5's relationship to Imperator, which is also relatively loose.
Okay, so we're gonna work on building our
The thing about
military
comparing
background,
Imperator to EU5 is that the similarity is something you feel as you play,
Also, I need
rather
to
than
kinda,
something easily detectable and explainable.
get
EU5
Portugal
has
out of
roads,
their
Imperator
alliance
has
somehow.
roads. EU5 has buildings that
Or,
you
like,
build
wait for a time
multiple
when
of,
they're
and which
not
are really
attack.
important. Imperator has those too. EU5 has a system of army composition, albeit a bare bones one, and Imperator has one too, albeit much more complicated than EU5's. It's hard to point to exactly what it is, but the extremely large tech tree, which you're not meant to fully research, the focus on buildings and pops, the road building, and the relative simplicity of trade make EU5 feel like Imperator sometimes. In Imperator, conquering more land wasn't always the best choice, as you only really got power from either making a ton of slaves who were likely to revolt on you, or from accepting the culture in the region you conquered for a quick boost of strength, or from assimilating new conquests to your culture, which could take a very long time, but had no penalties. Well, in EU5, I often found myself massively power spiking when I accepted a new culture, like in my Holland game where I conquered much of Westphalia. Accepting the Westphalians saw my levy count skyrocket. Just like what happens in Imperator if you immediately accept, say, the Etruscans after conquering them. Short-term, huge power gain, but assimilating is better in the long run. I think it's the tech tree that most makes the game feel like Imperator. There are mission trees in EU5, but they're a pretty sorry state, at least in the early access patch, so I've been ignoring them. They can be useful, as the rewards on some of the missions can help a lot with your values and stuff, but beyond that, I find myself often being frustrated at how weird they are. I suspect that missions will see significantly stronger. It's hard, elsewise, to explain why EU5 feels like Imperator. It just has the same gameplay loop, it feels like, with its focus on pops. Victoria 3 also uses pops, but it uses them differently and more dynamically than EU4 or Imperator. I think it's the way that you accept cultures, assimilate populations, focus on demographics that really pull it towards that Imperator vibe. I find myself making the same decisions as I would with Imperator, where I'm looking at cultures and thinking, will I be conquering enough of those pops to make accepting them worth it? And in EU4, you do a similar thought process, except it's not very often that you culture convert, whereas conquest in EU5 is significantly more focused on assimilation over the course of the game. This is expressed by the fact that you can only have a core on a place that has a majority your culture or an extended culture and your faith. Anyway, with that, the Imperator comparison ends. It's a vibe, it's a style, it's a thought process. Imperator feels like EU5 in that sense. Real quick now, I want to talk about my overall thoughts on EU5, having played it for 69 hours. Definitely not a review or anything like that, more just some of my initial joys and initial concerns. Oh, but before we get to that, we can't forget about the greatest Paradox game out there, March of the Eagles. Naturally, the two games are like mirror images of one another, thanks to the presence of units on the map and of course, their sharing of the timeline to a small extent. Basically, EU5 would better be called March of the Eagles 2. Back to the overall thoughts section. Europa Universalis 5 is a game which harkens back to an era of Paradox that I think many people have been clamoring for. EU5 is a very complex game in its totality, while being a little less complicated in each individual aspect when compared to its contemporaries. It's a game which really doesn't explain much to you, as it does have a tutorial, but the tutorial doesn't really explain a lot about what you ought to be doing. The tutorial won't tell you how important crown power is. It won't tell you that nobles consume 10 times as much fine cloth and other such important pieces of information. It's something which you intuit through problem solving. You notice that your income is terrible, so you look for ways to fix it. You check your tax efficiency and trade income maybe, you see that they're influenced by your crown power, things increase your crown power, but of course you don't know how to do that. You realize that cabinet members increase the power of the estate they're from, and then you guess that a guy from the crown estate will increase your crown power. You even think to make one of them your head of cabinet, and it turns out that that too increases the crown power. After 2 runs to a tax death spiral that I couldn't figure out how to solve, and after figuring it out, my game was suddenly so much more fun, and that's because I went from being lost to having some plans of attack. The game does have a pretty robust hint system, however, and look, I'm a zoomer, okay? I found myself being way too zoomer-brained to read the hints. I would skim them maybe at most, then just think, nah, I'll just click things until they work. And in many ways, I found that to work pretty well. The nested tooltip system, which I believe was first introduced in CK3 actually, makes this triumphant return in EU5, and it's a real blessing. I was able to figure out a whole lot in the game by just reading the much shorter tooltips and then mousing over things. For example, the consumption that buildings have, I learned about by just looking at the numbers. Rather than having a hint maybe imply to me that nobles consume goods, I looked at the numbers and found that I suppose I just like to see numbers instead of getting some ideas and hints. I find that EU5 is extremely satisfying once you do understand the numbers, but at first can be very confusing. You'll find things happening to you and you won't get it. The truth is, you learn to plan ahead after your first couple attempts at playing. You learn that food will become an issue as the game goes on because you'll be pulling peasants into pop groups that consume more food, so you need to build more than what you might expect. You'll learn what sort of techs you're interested in and which ones are a waste of time for you to build. When I first started playing EU5, it reminded me of the days when I was a teenager just playing Crusader Kings 2 for the first time. I got into the game via a Northern Lion video where he was showing off the Old Gods expansion, which was new at the time. I acquired the game and got totally immersed into it without really understanding much at all that was going on, until I started watching some Arumba videos that more properly explained things. As a kid, I was happy to have my hand held by a YouTuber, but of course, even with the help, it's not like I really understood hours of playing that I started to understand things beyond just copying what the YouTubers were saying. EU5 is the exact same feel for me. I find myself discovering new things all the time and being excited by it. I uncover how some mechanic works, then start applying that knowledge in subsequent playthroughs, with each one being more successful because of it. My first Florence playthrough, I struggled to even form Tuscany at all, but by the 50 or so hour mark, I had conquered Genoa and Venice while being allied to Milan for protection from coalitions, and I did so around 1400. I was very proud of my progress, and EU5 really does make you feel proud of what you accomplished because it can be a tough game to crack. I think EU5 will be a very good game, however it'll take the willingness of its players to really shine. You have to be willing to accept that the game will be confusing and it will not make things easy to find. You have to be willing to look at all the numbers and understand things, or else I guess just wait for a YouTuber to explain it to you. It's hard to really say for sure, given my memories of first starting EU4 were A, in a very different era of the game, and B, well over 10 years ago, but I distinctly remember EU4 clicking much faster for me. Back then, provinces all had a base tax, and if you conquered the province with a high base tax, then you made more money. EU5 is just not so direct. Things in EU4 made sense relatively quickly to me, but EU5 has some of that Victoria 3 style learning arc. Success is easy to measure but hard to predict. In EU5, your nation's base tax is a solid measure of how well you're doing economically, and you even have a great power score which can sort of rank your overall strength. But how do you increase those things consistently? That takes a lot more work to figure out, because it's not just conquest. Anyway, my overall point with regards to EU5 is that it's a game which reminds me of CK2 and EU4 in the early days. This is not a casual game, and it's not a simple game, nor is it really all that complex at the same time. Once you figured it out, you figured it out. And you'll be relying on the different circumstances each nation has to keep the game fresh, which is very much so like EU4 before mission trees came out. CK2 is a game which looks complicated but more so just has an awful UI. EU5 kinda suffers from that weakness in its current state, but that could change for release. EU5, like Victoria 3, has problems with hidden information way in hard to find places, and that too is a weakness, but overall, I've been very happy with EU5, and I hope that what shortcomings it does have might get addressed for release. When the game comes out, I'll have a review video which will try to evaluate the game for its merits at release, and of course, my opinion will be colored by this early access experience, but I'll be able to levy all the full critiques and praises I otherwise have if I could know that's what's coming in the final product. For all I know, much of what I've praised here will end up being removed for release, just as equally the things I dislike might be fixed. So if you don't like the vagueness of this impression video, then sorry, it's the nature of an early access style video. Anyway, if any Paradox devs are watching, by the way, I'll just say congratulations on this monumental game. No matter how many flaws
like
in it,
really
the bones on this thing are solid, and it must have been a gargantuan effort.
Really
I hope
quality
that maybe
from
you
what
found
I've
it valuable
seen,
when I
but
said
I haven't seen much.
Thank you for your time.
I've seen some videos and stuff, but yeah.
With the storm imbued tide. By the grace of God, you've done it.
assault.
Let them know.
This one hits it. He catches it.
This place is alive.
Off to the races. Made it look easy. Straight third.
We all know the Roman Empire was vast, but what was its most remote military outpost? By ancient accounts, it was a mysterious place where people dwelled in caves, where boats were made of turtle shells, and where kings were stoned for setting foot beyond their palaces. Many more fantastical stories abound, but can we locate it? There are many places one might look. For starters, we can break out a map and a ruler to measure the distances from Rome to the far corners of the empire at the time of its greatest territorial extent. But these are just linear distances. An accounting must be made of actual travel routes and travel times, which in many cases double the true distances of such locations. But that's not enough to measure remoteness. Adding further to this, we might want to take into account the military campaigns which extended beyond such territorial borders and would have installed, at least temporarily, a Roman fort bearing the imperial aquila. For even greater diligence in pursuit of our answer, we could even stretch the definition of fort to include the tiny camps which would have been pitched by soldiers on expeditions which were launched into remote regions such as the frozen north or the burning Sahara. Yet even with all of this mapped out, there's always been speculation about just how far Rome's tendrils reached. But in 2004, archaeologists found it, concrete proof of Rome's most remote outpost. The discovery came in the form of this history, written with pride by the soldiers of the 2nd Legion Trianafortis in 143 AD. And here's the wildest part. The location where this was found isn't even on the map we've been looking at. So today, let's dive into the history of this lost and most remote Roman fort and find out what brought them to the ends of the earth. In recent news, a new pope is in the Vatican. That means that all eyes are on Rome, not just you and the other Roman nerds. But something you might have missed is actually other archaeological findings in Rome of a forgotten papal palace. Had it not been for today's sponsor, Ground News. Ground News is a website and app that empowers you to be a properly informed consumer of the news. Each day they pull in thousands of news articles from around the world and organize them by story in one place. For each story, you'll get a visual breakdown of the story's political bias, reliability, and ownership. So with this particular papal story, around 30 sources are reporting on it. Now with traditional algorithm-based news articles, you're going to be fed the most sensational take, but Ground News allows you to engage with the material in a more informed way. So for example, here through the app, I can see that a few right-leaning sources with lower reputation are trying to grab attention using more emotive headlines like Secret and Breakthrough, while I see a couple left-leaning outlets have in fact actually restrained themselves with terms like possible. The Smithsonian, a high factuality source in the center, actually offers the most historical context, pointing out, for instance, that this structure is believed to have housed dozens of popes before the 13th century. So as you can see, this is a really great way to filter out the noise when it comes to headlines and really drill down to the best articles. Another one of my favorite features on Ground News is their blind spot feed, which shows you stories disproportionately covered by one side or the other. It's essential if you care about history, context, and not being misled by headlines. I honestly love Ground News and think it's one of the best platforms out there to take on in our age of misinformation. So head on over to ground.news/Invicta or scan the QR code on screen to transform how you read the news and get 40% off the unlimited access Vantage plan. That's ground.news/Invicta. For me, Ground News has been a vital part of my online life, and I know you'll enjoy it just as much as I do. So check it out. Now, before we begin, I want to say that I got a bit carried away with this episode. Often, with these more exploratory videos, I'd like to actually start broad and provide context as we wind our way towards answering the main question. So in this case, that'll include chapters on the following: measuring remoteness, the discovery, background on the region's geography, background on the region's history, a journey to the outpost. It's a long one for sure, which will be ideal for just kicking back and listening in podcast. But if you want to jump straight to the chase, please use the timestamps on screen and in the description below. That being said, let's get started. locating Rome's most remote outposts can be unexpected. Knowing when, where, and what to look for isn't always clear. For our purposes, though, we'll be seeking to identify the location of a fort, garrisoned by soldiers of the Imperial era, which is furthest away from the city of Rome. To this end, there are numerous ways we might go about searching for and qualifying the potential candidates. One method would be to pull up a map of Rome at its greatest territorial extent. As you can see, this puts us roughly in the year 117.
I did get a foothold in Italy before I go
this year, under the reign of Emperor Trajan, the frontiers have well and truly been pushed to the extremes. So let's now take out a ruler and measure to the edges.
I could easily jump from right here.
The northernmost port along the Germanic border is 1,300 kilometers away.
I kind of want to bar this part off.
Britannia at 2,000, the Bosphorus border at 2,200, Egypt's border at 2,700, Armenia's border at 3,000, and Mesopotamia's border at 3,400 kilometers away. Here's a graphic we'll be using to log the data for our various locations. Already, these distances are formidable, and among them, we can see that the edge of Mesopotamia is the most remote, at least as the crow flies. But now we have to account for more realistic travel routes and times from Rome to each location. To this end, I've actually used this awesome Orbis web tool to gauge route itineraries. The website is fantastic and lets you actually break things down by season, by travel type, and more. So for instance, we can plot a trip to the British frontier. Orbis tells me that, quote, the fastest journey from Rome to Lugdalium in July takes 30.9 days, covering 3,502 kilometers. On top of this, I've added an extra 240 kilometers and 1.6 days by foot to get us to the westernmost part of the Antonine Road. Here's what our travel map now looks like when we account for these more realistic travel routes to all of our destinations. Things are truly much more daunting. For quantitative comparison, I've updated our graph from before. As you can see, all the figures have jumped up significantly. Germania's distances more than double, and now sits closer to the middle of the pack. Mesopotamia is still at the top, but has now been slightly edged out by Armenia's border, which is a whopping 4,600 kilometers away from Rome. As a final way to contextualize this data, we can now add on a second axis which plots the travel times associated with each of these aforementioned routes. My thinking here is that we need to account for variable travel times on roads, on rivers, and on seas. It's great for reference. Yet ultimately, the rankings are only slightly impacted. For our purposes at least, the variance does seem to now equalize Armenia and Mesopotamia to within just a few hours from one another, at around 45.5 days journey from Rome. However, all of these destinations represent points along the frontier of Rome at its greatest extent. But we know that definitions of frontiers are actually quite fuzzy, and Roman military campaigns at times extended the empire's footprint beyond the 117 AD borders we have been looking at. Take for instance Germania. While the frontier ended up settling along the fixed geographic boundary of the Rhine, the Germanic wars of the early 1st century had seen troops stationed as far away as the Elbe River. Similarly, in Britannia, the legions under General Agricola had established forts up to the north of modern Scotland, before eventually fortifying a more southerly frontier along Hadrian and Antonine's Wall. Across our other regions, there were similar degrees of border fuzziness. I've updated our distance graphic to account for these high water marks of Roman territory. As you can see, all of the furthest possible outposts are now extended in range. But admittedly, it's quite marginal in the grand scheme of things, and doesn't much change up our rankings. Armenia and Mesopotamia still lead the pack. Now let's explore another idea. What about Roman military campaigns which tried, but failed to establish a new frontier? The best examples of this are Emperor Augustus's two often forgotten invasions of Arabia and Nubia. We've covered these in prior videos if you want to learn more. But had these actually resulted in territorial gain, the new outposts would have been among the furthest out of our data points. Other points we can consider are reports of Roman military units which ventured beyond the frontier, not for conquest, but for exploration. In such cases, we have to really stretch our definition of a Roman outpost. For what was most likely a small force. Destinations which fall under this category would include records of 1st and 2nd century AD expeditions into West Sub-Saharan Africa, as well as Nero's mission to find the source of the Nile, which was reportedly passed to a group of Praetorians. We've also covered this topic in another episode if you want to learn more. If included, they likely be in our rankings, However, I've decided to rule them out because there are very poor records of where they actually ended up, leading to some pretty big errors. Furthermore, any such trips would have only resulted in small, temporary Roman camps, of which no concrete archaeology has been found, nor will they ever be found. Given all this, what is Rome's truly outpost? As you can get a sense from our graphics, the locations to be are all in the east. This makes sense considering that the other directions are basically restricted by huge geographic barriers. Looking to the east then, we get closer to the answer. But another major barrier rears its head in the form of the Parthian and Sassanid empires which long served as a check against Roman expansion. Indeed, it is they who profited mightily from trade along the Silk Road and took great efforts to cut out the Romans from more direct relations with the grand empires of the Far East like China. Yet there was one way to sidestep the Persians: the sea lanes which flowed out and around the Arabian Peninsula. This is precisely where archaeologists made the discovery of the most distant Roman outpost. The location, it turns out, were the Farazan Islands, located along the southwestern shores of Saudi Arabia. They lie a whopping 4,000 linear kilometers from Rome. For context, that's the same distance as from New York City to LA, from Paris to Canada, and from Tokyo to Thailand. Truly mind-boggling scales for an empire which existed 2 millennia ago. What distinguishes it even further from other frontier outposts is that it lies truly in the middle of nowhere, being projected out well in advance of the nearest border of Egypt. But as we've discussed before, the realities of ancient travel make this distance even more expansive. From Rome, one would have to skip across the shores of the Mediterranean over to Egypt. Here, one would then hitch a ride up the Nile to the first cataract. At this point, one would travel overland to the seaport of Berenike before sailing a further 1,000 kilometers to the Farazan Islands. Altogether, it's a trip of 4,640 kilometers, or 2,883 miles, which would have taken about 46 days to reach at the fastest possible. Hit a hitch in traffic, and you're now getting closer to the roughly 2-month travel time it would have taken Columbus to cross the Atlantic. Wow. But stepping back for a second, you might ask, how do we actually know there was a Roman outpost in the Farazans? The answer comes down to a lucky archaeological find. It's actually quite new, having first been discovered by chance in a 1981 survey of the region, and subsequently only brought to light with little fanfare in 2004 during the 37th meeting of the Seminar for Arabian Studies held in London. I actually dug up the original paper here. It's a quick read, full of interesting context, which I'll link below for you to digest. But basically, the proof for Romans at the Farazan Islands boils down to the discovery of a quite unambiguous stone block bearing Latin inscriptions. Upon translation, it reads as follows: For the Emperor, Caesar, Titus,
that's not
Aelius,
necessarily...
Hadrianus, Antoninus, Augustus Pius.
I don't know if
Pontifex
that's necessarily...
Maximus, in the 7th year of his tribunitian authority, 3 times consul, father of his country, on behalf of the vexillation of the 2nd Legion Trianafortis and its auxiliary troops, Castricius Aprinus,
I was going to say, if it was just in
prefect
Latin,
of the Portus of Farazan and of the Sea of Hercules, has made and dedicated this monument.
Yeah.
And there it is, the proof of Rome's furthest military outpost, dated to the year 144 AD. This is basically as good as you can hope for from an archaeological perspective, when you find a literal note listing the who, what, when, where, and why of the piece itself. Since then, further findings have been made. Shortly after the first inscription was found, a second, more damaged one that listed the letters VI and FERR. Researchers have interpreted this as signifying the presence of troops from the Legio Sixferata. Given the fact that they were briefly stationed in Arabia during Hadrian's rule, the potential earliest date of occupation might actually be moved up earlier to 119 AD. Though this comes with the caveat that the legion was moved around the region quite a lot over the ensuing decades, thus making any specific dating difficult. A later Franco-Saudi team in 2022 found additional artifacts dated to the Roman period. These include a small stone statue, a garnet bearing the name for a figure named Genos, a folded Roman shield, and pieces of Lorica Squamata. So now that we've established that the Romans were indeed in this most remote of outposts, we can ask, what were they doing there? As is always the case, I'd like to start answering such questions with a broad lay of the land. Geographically speaking, the Ferzans are a group of small coral islands just 40 kilometers off the shores of Arabia. The largest of the islands, measuring 50 kilometers across, is surrounded by a nation of smaller neighbors, many of which are 5 kilometers or less across. Today, the islands are barren. In the past, however, they harbored more life. While we have no Roman-era descriptions of these lands, Arabic writings from the 15th century give us some idea of the conditions. The navigator Ahmad Majid reports as follows, quote, "North of the Hundasan and around it are islands having cattle and camels, palms and fruits. There are about 20 houses, and their harbor is for 1,000 ships. It can be used in the Kharif monsoon in all winds. There you can find a well called Sham, which will water 1,000 ships and not run dry." Thus we see that the Ferzans could have similarly been identified by the Romans as a suitable port and way station. But for more context on why the area might be worth actually founding an outpost upon, let's explore the wider characteristics of the Red Sea. Zooming out a bit, we notice that the Ferzans are not the only island chain. Across from it lie the Dalag Islands. To the south are the Cameron and Hanish Islands, and around the region are many other smaller formations. Their existence is owed to the nature of the Red Sea itself. Having been molded by relatively recent tectonic activity, it is overall quite shallow, at less than 100 meters measured along the extensive shelves on either shoulder of the rift, which have long proved fertile ground for the proliferation of marine life and corals. Such shallow, obstacle-strewn waters are what made passage through the Red Sea so dangerous, especially in anything but conditions. Apparently, most ancient navigators stuck to the deeper parts of the central channel. Only local experts could be relied upon to pilot ships closer to the shores, or even within the inner lanes which ran just behind the bands of coral reef. To make matters worse, the region has adversarial wind patterns caused by the elongated shape, its flanking mountain ranges, and the presence of monsoons. In the past, the Red Sea was often considered as two seas, split around the latitude of 20 degrees north. The north part of the Red Sea is dominated by persistent winds flowing towards the southeast, with speeds ranging anywhere from between 7 to 12 kilometers an hour. The rest of the Red Sea is subjected to regular and seasonally reversible winds that blow southeast in the summer and northwest in the winter. Given these conditions, ancient sailors preferred the southern half of the Red Sea, where they could time their travels with the monsoons to blow in and out of the region more efficiently on the way to further destinations in Africa, Arabia, and India. For a first-hand account of what sailing the Red Sea was like in the Roman era, we can actually quote from the Periplus of the Erythraean Sea, the ancient name for the Indian Ocean. This Periplus is basically a travelogue, dated to around 60 AD, of a man who routinely traveled these waters. The relevant passage goes, quote, "Navigation is dangerous along the whole coast of Arabia, which is without harbors, with bad anchorages, foul, inaccessible because of breakers and rocks, and terrible in every way. Therefore, we hold our course down the middle of the Gulf, and pass on as fast as possible by the country of Arabia, until we have come to the Burnt Island, directly below which there are regions of peaceful people, nomadic, pastures of cattle, sheep, and camels." As you can see, the passage confirms much of the geographic troubles we have been discussing. Interestingly, though, it makes no mention of the Ferzan Islands as part of the Red Sea journey. To see why they eventually come into the picture, though, let's now turn to the history of trade and Roman involvement in the region. Trade along the Red Sea dates back millennia to the Bronze Age period. Over the years, successive empires showed interest in the region, particularly as a means to link the worlds of the Mediterranean, Near East, and India. In the Hellenic period, the Ptolemies of Egypt were particularly keen to exploit their access to the Red Sea. This came in the form of new commercial contacts, infrastructure, and administrative positions. Several important ports were founded along the Red Sea, with linkages back across the desert to the Nile. The two most prominent, founded around 275 BC in Upper Egypt, were Myos Hermos and Berenike. Such investments proved key to unlocking the potential for Red Sea trade. However, for a time, the Ptolemaic sailors were limited in their range, relying on intermediaries to bring in goods from further abroad. Yet the ancient historian Posidonius claims that by the late 2nd century, the Greeks had themselves learned to use the monsoons to make the long journey to India and back. Such direct trade increased profit margins and fostered more commercial activity. When the Romans took over Egypt in 30 BC, they inherited this burgeoning region. The relative stability which resulted from the Pax Romana had a great stimulative effect on trade, not just within the Mediterranean basin, but also in foreign markets. The Red Sea merchants were beneficiaries of this trend in globalization, and a range of evidence indicates that trade began to increase significantly through the 1st century AD. Indeed, the historian Strabo makes the following observation, quote, "In his day, 120 vessels sailed regularly from Egypt to India, whereas previously, very few made the journey." Further description from our sources attests to the incredibly diverse nature of goods making their way through the Red Sea. These included African gold, silver, and ivory, Roman glass and metalwork, Arabian frankincense and aromatics, Indian pepper, pearls, and precious stones, Sri Lankan cinnamon and spices, Chinese silks and porcelain, and much, much more. With such tremendous wealth, there was an obvious incentive for the state to become involved. As had occurred with the Ptolemies, the Romans now stepped in to enforce customs controls and taxation. Sea trade, all in 2nd century AD, maintained much of its prior continuity, though some evidence suggests a partial decline in trade volumes. This may have resulted from the rise of competing trade routes and the predation of traffic. Indeed, we hear that piracy became a large issue in the area. This was exacerbated by the geography of the Red Sea we have previously discussed. It was a narrow channel, with many treacherous coral reefs and islands from which raiders could quickly emerge to strike before doing attack to safety. Something had to be done. This is where the Roman outposts at the Saracen Islands likely ended. As might be expected, prior to the establishment of a position at the Saracen Islands, the Romans already had a regional military system in place. Legions were stationed in Egypt with detachments routinely garrisoned along the Upper Nile to safeguard from attacks by the Nubians and other raiders. These would have been assisted by auxiliary units and local forces. Some naval presence was also likely active, though from what scant records we have, its nature was none too impressive, consisting mostly of a few small ships, which were probably holdovers from the Ptolemaic days. Administering all this would have been the provincial governor of Egypt. In the early 1st century, he would have been able to call upon the support of 3 legions. However, by the 2nd century AD, this count had dwindled as there were massive troop redeployments in the wake of Trajan's campaigns in Dacia and Persia. Once the emperor had finished these conquests, though, it seems he turned at least some of his attentions to strengthening the Red Sea. Under his reign, the old Pharaoh's Canal, an ancient version of the Suez Canal, was reconstructed. The author Eutropius reports further that, quote, he also fitted out a fleet that he might use it to lay waste to the coasts of India. Thus, we have some clues here that Trajan may have been responsible for increased military investment in the Red Sea. We don't know exactly their purpose, but likely a pressing concern would have been to combat piracy and to establish outposts which could be used for future military campaigns, as is suggested by some later authors. The process would have taken some time for planning and construction, with the scope of the initiative changing over the years as successors took the throne. The earliest we can date the Romans to the Saracens would have been around 119 AD, when troops from Legio VI Ferrata, whose name seems to appear on the islands, were deployed to nearby Arabia during the reign of Hadrian. If this connection can be drawn, then we might speculate that the Saracens were the Arabian province. Yet things would soon change. Our second archaeological record for Romans at the Saracens dates some 50 years later to 144 with Legio II Triana Fortis, given the posting of Egypt. Thus it seems that the Saracens had now been administratively transferred from Arabia to this western province. Furthermore, our inscription makes mention of a Christianus Prinus, prefect of the Fortis of Pharazon and of the Sea of Hercules. Here we see that not only had a fort been erected, but it was part of a special administrative region, similar to the one found in the nearby port prefecture of Berenike. We should also note that the Sea of Hercules here seems to be the name given to the southern Red Sea. An interesting mythical parallel to the Pillars of Hercules in the West Mediterranean, which gave way to the Atlantic. Having established the outpost, what would have been like for a soldier to be posted here? Let's begin with their arrival. Journey to the fort was characterized by the route previously described, going up the Nile from the legionary base at the Delta, over to the port of Berenike, then across the seas to the ferries. Here, Strabo gives some colorful descriptions of what one might encounter along the way. Quote, At the bottom of the bay is situated the city of Berenike. After the bay is the island of Hephaestus, so called from the accidental circumstance of it having once been infested with serpents. It was cleared of the serpents by the king on account of the destruction occasioned by those noxious animals to the persons who christened the island, and on account of the topazes found on it. Next after this island are many tribes of fishers and nomads. Then succeeds the harbor of the goddess of Sotera, the Preserver, which had its name from the circumstances of the escape and preservations of some masters of vessels from great dangers by sea. After this, the coast and the Gulf seem to undergo so the voyage along the coast is no longer among rocks and approaches almost close to Arabia. The sea is so shallow as to be scarcely the depth of 2 orgui and has the appearance of a meadow, in consequence of the seaweeds which abound in the passage, being visible through and under the water. Even trees here grow from under the water, and the sea abounds with sea dogs. Many hunting grounds for elephants in obscure cities and islands lie in front of them. The greater part are nomads, while husbandmen are few. In the country occupied by some of these nations, striatum grows in large quantities. The fish eaters, on the ebbing of the tide, collect fish, which they cast upon the rocks and dry in the sun. When they have well broiled them, the bones are piled in heaps, and the flesh trodden with the feet is put into cakes, which are again exposed to the sun and used as food. In bad weather, when fish cannot be produced, the bones of which they made heaps are pounded, made into cakes, and eaten, but they suck the fresh bones. Some also live upon shellfish when they are fattened, which is done by throwing them into holes in standing pools of the sea, where they are supplied with small fish, and used as food when other fish are scarce. To this end, they have various kinds of places for preserving and feeding fish, from whence they derive their supply. Some of the inhabitants of that part of the coast, which is without water, go inland every 5 days, accompanied by all their families with songs and rejoicings, to the watering places, where, throwing themselves on their faces, they drink as beasts until their stomachs are distended like a drum. They then return again to the sea coast. They dwell in caves or cabins with roofs consisting of beams and rafters made of the bones and spines of whales and covered with branches of the olive tree. The turtle eaters live under the cover of shells of turtles, which are large enough to be used as boats. Some make of the seaweed, which is thrown up in large quantities, lofty and hill-like heaps which are hollowed out and underneath which they live. They cast out the dead, which are carried away by the tide, as food for fish. There are also 3 islands which follow in succession: the island of tortoises, the island of seals, and the island of hawks. Along the whole coast, there are plantations of palm trees, olive trees, and laurels, not only within, but in a great part also without the straits. Strabo goes on to describe more aspects of the people, animal, and places along the Red Sea. It's a fascinating read, but for now we can jump ahead to the arrival at the Perisses. Presumably, it had a port and dock facility, which would have been accompanied by a fort in the manner of the other desert outposts we see in remote regions of Arabia and Egypt. So that being said, what did soldiers do once they got situated? The troop posting at the Pharisine Islands may have been associated with new military offensives in the region. Evidence for this comes from the mid-2nd century orator Aelius Aristides. He writes of contemporary wars at the edges of the empire, made an end to the misery of the peoples of the Red Sea who are unable to enjoy the blessings of the present. But exactly who was being targeted is unknown. Perhaps it was some of the larger regional powers like the Axumites or Himyarites. More likely, though, would have been the local tyrants and traders which hailed from the smaller tribes that dotted the region. Here, the earlier Periplus leaves us with a description of these peoples. Quote, "Many tribes inhabit the country, speech, some partially, and some altogether. The land is similarly dotted here and there with caves and fish eaters, but the country inland is peopled by rascally men speaking 2 languages, who live in villages and nomadic camps, by whom those sailing of the middle course are killed, and those surviving shipwrecks are taken for slaves." Beyond this, we have very little evidence of further activity explicitly. Presumably, soldiers would have gone about regular duties of such outposts, namely, maintaining the facilities and acting as policemen and customs agents. In their off time, perhaps troops would have been free to wander the island, fishing, swimming, and taking in the sights. These attractions which have made the area a tourist destination. But it's not so sure how enjoyable it would have been to be stuck in such a place for months on end, especially 2,000 years ago before the advent of air conditioning, refrigeration, and sunscreen. Making matters worse, the remoteness of the location meant that there were few opportunities to truly get off base and visit a local spa, inn, or brothel. Perhaps some shore leave was granted to visit the lands of neighboring Arabia, such as the villages and cities of the Kingdom of Himyar. Yet, just how much interaction was present is up to speculation. Given the overwhelming likelihood of boredom at such remote postings, the most interesting times of day would have been when ships came into port, bearing exotic peoples, goods, and stories from afar. Apparently, there was even a local practice of bringing aboard Marines to protect ships from pirate attacks. If this Roman garrison engaged in such practices, then perhaps the troops here stood a chance of venturing into the further beyond. Maybe, just maybe, this meant making it all the way to India, alongside the most adventurous merchants. It's at this point that we might wonder what ultimately became of the outposts of the Pharisees. Unfortunately, we have few records to provide any concrete timeline. Speculation is once more warranted. For starters, we can point out the latter half of the 2nd century marked the beginning of turbulent times. Around 165 AD, the Antonine Plague spread across the lands, devastating the empire and wreaking havoc on commercial activity. Further instability in the crisis of the 3rd century greatly undermined the Pax Romana, further weakening the once prosperous trade routes, though admittedly its severity is difficult to quantify. Despite this downswing, the Romans still had an interest in controlling Red Sea trade and projecting their influence into southern Arabia over the following centuries. This might mean a continued reason for the Pharazan outpost to be maintained. Indeed, their utility as a staging point for force projection would have been key as the Eastern Romans and Axumites engaged in proxy wars with non-Christian, pro-Persian factions over control of Himyar. Ultimately, though, the pendulum would swing in the other direction with the rise of the Sassanids, who in 570 AD had enough strength to invade the region and bring it firmly into their zone of control. It is at this point that we can likely conclude that any Roman presence on the Pharazans would have been wiped away. But the strategic value of this location was not lost to the ages. Other people seeking to dominate the Red Sea would find use in its sheltered bays and freshwater wells. For now, this is where our story ends. I hope you've appreciated this deep dive into the history of this most remote of Roman outposts and the surrounding context of Red Sea trade, which I find fascinating. If you like this episode, be sure to like and subscribe for more content, and check out these other related videos. See you in the next one.
Okay, if there's one AI site builder you need to meet, it's this dope tech from Wix. Now this whole flow is a conversation, so your words actually build your website. I'm going for a story, and after a free-flowing conversation, I get this detailed site brief. And just like that, my first draft is ready. Now that's dope. Next, you can really get in there and style it your way. Here's the fun part. You can regenerate this whole thing over and over, or you can tweak something specific, like your layout. Let me describe what I had in mind. Yeah, that's fire. If there was ever a time to speak life into your dreams, it's right now using the Wix AI website builder.
I don't even know what just popped on. It's a good channel.
For nearly all of human existence, battles were destined to be forgotten. The prehistoric world preserved neither the names nor the exploits of its champions. In time, early written records mentioned warfare, but in sparse description. It's on the walls of a temple along the Nile, where Egyptians carved the oldest known detailed account of a battle in history. This is the story they tell. Word spread of the Egyptian advance. The pharaoh had emerged from the desert, and with his mighty army passed north through the city of Gaza. Now only a stretch of rugged lands lay between the pharaoh and the great hilltop city of Medina, where thousands of the enemy awaited him. The young pharaoh Thutmose III pondered his approach to the battlefield. The annals inscribed on the temple record his generals urged him to consider only the safe roads, which cut north and east, saying to him, "Now 2 roads are here. Let our victorious lord proceed on the one which is satisfactory to his heart. Do not make us go on that difficult road." For Thutmose knew of the third way, the narrow pass of Aruna. It was choked here and there by jagged hills and vulnerable to ambush at its exit, but it ran nearly to the foot of the enemy city. Although Thutmose had reigned as sole ruler of Egypt for mere months, his will carried the mandate of the one believed to be his divine father, the greatest god, Amun-Ra. Therefore, the army filed behind their king, entered the dangerous paths. The ranks pushed together.
It's literally using the same
chariots
sound
were
effect as
lugged by
EU4.
porters and pack animals, and a scribe carried a sword. Commit to written history this campaign in a battle that would alter the fate of Egypt. The men were only days away from the Battle of Megiddo. Armies like these ambush when they failed to scout ahead and remain vigilant. Many of us approach the internet in the same dangerous way. See, I connect to public Wi-Fi often when researching for these videos, but I learned that public networks leave me vulnerable to having my more stolen. Enter Surfshark VPN. It's basically become my elite bodyguard unit, top-notch encryption and leak protection on public Wi-Fi. In the library or coffee shop, I connect to a VPN server like this, about hackers, and relax while I read up on useless ancient warfare. If my email or card has been compromised, Surfshark Alert lets me know and takes action ASAP. And as a history lover, there's videos and shows that censor Surfshark.com/historydose or use code HistoryDose at checkout to get 4 extra months of Surfshark VPN. The lords of foreign lands sensed vulnerability in the Egyptian throne. As Thutmose III was heralded as the new supreme pharaoh, the prince of a distant city-state called Kadesh pressed his advantage. Backed by a rival of Egypt, the Mitanni Empire, the Prince of Kadesh gathered many forces from the disjointed tribes of Canaan and Syria at the fortified town Megiddo. From there, the coalition could choke off Egypt's access to essential materials, including specific woods to make chariots and tin for bronze weapons. The enemies may have further planned to invade Egypt to bring water to the banks of the Nile. Until now, he had been merely a co-ruler of Egypt under the great female pharaoh, Hatshepsut. Having been a wife and sister of Thutmose's late father, Hatshepsut was both his stepmother and aunt. Her reign had witnessed prosperity in Egypt, in its capital of Thebes, where she built the Temple of Hatshepsut. Over the course of 15 years, architects and laborers had constructed shrines and pillared terraces along the mountainside. The causeway was lined with kneeling statues and sphinxes, and in the lower courtyard, gardens swayed over sparkling pools. Such temples may have pleased the gods, but they would not pacify the enemies of Egypt. Hatshepsut was dead, and the crown belonged to Thutmose alone. He swiftly raised his army. The warriors had been trained by officers and organized into divisions. The pharaohs of this era would summon 1 in 10 men for military service, but many soldiers here had enlisted of their own volition, no doubt enticed by the prospect of gaining plunder, land, and slaves. Together, the warriors in the supply train moved north along the Nile in the spring of 1458 BC. The river had long traced a green thread of civilization through the Sahara. Each year, the life-giving Nile filled a wide floodplain and left behind miles of fertile earth. The people harvested abundant fields of wheat and barley, which provided the 2 staples of the Egyptian diet, bread and beer. Thutmose understood that this kingdom did not endure without bloodshed. Narmer, or Menes, was the very first ruler to unify Lower and Upper Egypt in around 3000 BC. The palette shows the founding king looming over his enemies, who was desecrated by placing their severed heads and genitals at their feet. It was some time after his reign that Egypt entered its first golden age, known as the Old Kingdom. These early kings directed the construction of the pyramids of Giza. They were built from millions of massive blocks encased in radiant white limestone. Grand causeways, temples, and great sphinx adorned the surroundings. Although these pyramids were over 1,000 years old to Thutmose, life proceeded in Egypt much as it had a millennium before. People tended to farms and livestock, while priests glorified an evolving pantheon of gods and prepared the dead for passage into the afterlife. This civilization felt different than it once did. Its power had been shaken. In the wake of a second golden age called the Middle Kingdom, the Semitic-speaking Hyksos of the Levant seized control of northern Egypt in around 1650 BC. The towering outposts of the old dynasties fell into ruin, and rich mines and quarries were abandoned. It was the Egyptian dynasty of Thebes that stood against foreign rule. With a growing army surrounding the Magi of the desert, the Theban crown was Hyksos. I will not let you set foot in the fields unless I am upon you. I shall drink of the wine of your vineyard, which your people will press out for me. I shall destroy your dwelling place and cut down your trees. Thus, after a century of occupation, the House of Thebes reclaimed Egypt and banished its foreign overlords. Now only a few generations later, an enemy from the Levant challenged Egypt once again, the Prince of Kadesh and his coalition. Pharaoh Thutmose III assembled his forces on the edge of the desert, at the old fortified outposts of Charu. This army counted perhaps over 2,000 warriors, each called to bring ruin and death to the enemies of Egypt. The mud brick fortress gave way to burning white as the soldiers trekked into the barren Sinai. So began the 150-mile march to Gaza. The Egyptian army had begun to adopt aspects of foreign militaries in response to the years of Hyksos domination. The widespread introduction of the horse enabled the advent of Egyptian chariots, which were lightweight and expertly crafted to maximize agility for teams of drivers and archers. Skilled Nubian mercenaries created a combination of powerful new composite bows and traditional self-bows. The might of the pharaoh still rested, however, on large numbers of melee infantry. These mostly unarmored troops carried hide-covered shields and fought with bronze weapons, spears, axes, and the recently adopted kodash, or sickle sword. Day by day, the troops endured the sands, their arid march paved with cool nights in the desert. These men marched to war with a faith in the divine order. Hearts heavy with sin would be devoured, and the unworthy destroyed. God Osiris permitted those of a light heart to the peaceful field of reeds, for in life they had stood for Ma'at, truth, order, and justice. If any man should perish in this mission to Canaan, their death would come whilst carrying out the righteous command of the divine king, Thutmose III. After 10 days of marching, the army caught sight of Gaza. Although rebellion was loyal to the pharaoh, which afforded the Egyptians a night to rest and replenish their stores. The secrecy of their mission had kept them safe until now, but their presence the land as they pushed north over the coming days. Sturdy chariot units of the Canaanites and Syrians threatened to intercept them, but at last, after almost 3 weeks of marching, Thutmose and his force reached Yechem. 3 paths to the city of Megiddo lay before them.
Hey guys, after I win this war, I might hop off the live, but I'll probably be live tomorrow.
Thutmose called a council of his generals, saying to them, "That wretched enemy of Kadesh has entered into Megiddo.
Well, in the morning,
He's there at this
later
moment.
today.
He's gathered 200 princes of every foreign country which have been loyal to Egypt. The generals advised His Majesty to approach the enemy on one of the 2 outlying roads, which were wider and more secure. They warned him that the narrow and direct Aruna road would constrict their formations, such that the coalition forces, said to be gathering at its exit, would overrun the Egyptians as they filed out of the pass. but scouts soon returned with more reports on the movements of the enemy, intelligence that seemed to strengthen the resolve of the young pharaoh. Thutmose addressed his army. "You shall hold fast in the stride of your victorious lord on that road which becomes so narrow." The intrepid king moved to the head of the army, and he himself led them into the Aruna Pass. Notwithstanding the dangers of this road, the hills would provide cover for most of the approach to the city. Indeed, traveling over open ground carried its own risks. For Canaanite and Syrian armies relied on heavier, if less maneuverable, chariots. Much like the Egyptians, the weapons of the infantry included bows, spears, axes, and sickle swords. The southern wing of this enemy army guarded the Tanakh road, while its northern wing stood in the Kina road. The Egyptians now entered. Their arrival was unopposed. Thutmose may have evaded the enemy by cutting north to an Egyptian forces being concealed by the Tanakh. Regardless, for several hours, the Egyptian army streamlined to Kina. The enemy, having failed to block the pharaoh's advance, pulled back to camp as daylight waned. The annals relate that the Egyptians settled on the banks of a stream. Sentries were posted and rations given as a camp was pitched there for his majesty, and a charge was laid upon the entire army. "Prepare ye, make your weapons ready, for we will engage in combat with that wretched enemy in the morning." At dawn, the enemy army arrayed itself for battle. Behind them in the distance stood Megiddo, a city so strong and well situated it was said to be worth 1,000 cities. Then the approach of the army of Egypt echoed in the valley. The annals recount, His Majesty went forth in a chariot of electrum, arrayed in his weapons of war. Lord of power, like Montu of Thebes, while his father Amun strengthened his arms. Thutmose III assumed his place at the center of the army, and together the main force may have moved on to the southern end of the ridge on which Megiddo stood. The tactics of the opening clash are not recorded, but a certain progression of battle would have unfolded. Archers deployed to the front, loosing arrows on the Syrians and Canaanites. The enemy answered in kind, before waves of Egyptian infantry crashed into the battered lines of the enemy. Amidst shouts and horns, men with sickle swords and axes hacked at shields and cleaved flesh. Chariots of each army roared over the battlefield, threading gaps in the battle lines and cutting down those in their path. The battle devolved into a massacre as the enemy began to break under the Egyptian onslaught.
Crazy.
An inscription found in Nubia recorded that at Megiddo, My Majesty attacked them and they fled, falling in heaps. Thutmose had earlier sent a contingent northwest of the city to block an enemy escaping that direction. So the Canaanites and Syrians desperately made for the walls of Megiddo. They left a wake of upturned chariots and protruding arrows, of hacked limbs and groaning wounded. The Egyptians forfeited the chance to gain victory then, for it was written that their hearts became possessed by greed. Like crows, the Egyptians fell upon the dead field, picking and tearing away the possessions of the vanquished.
I don't know why they're going after some boy.
The fleeing Canaanites and Syrians meanwhile reached Megiddo. The gates were shut, so the people let down ropes of garments, and it was recorded. The wretched enemy of Kadesh and of this town were being dragged up hastily to get them into their town. For the fear of His Majesty entered their hearts. Their arms were weak, for a serpent diadem had overpowered them. With his enemies still in possession of Megiddo, the pharaoh issued a new command. He would lay siege to the city. Megiddo stood high, and though its walls were of older mud brick from the Middle Bronze Age, they were bolstered by newer stone structures on top. In certain sections, the walls measured over 12 feet thick and 25 feet tall. Besieging armies of this age could chop and ram at gates, and rush ladders to the walls, but they lacked the means to obliterate such a fort. Thutmose opted to starve the city. He commanded his army to surround Megiddo with a ditch and a wall of fresh timber. A Officials meanwhile tallied the loot from the battle, which included 924 chariots, some painted and others worked with gold, over 2,000 horses, the royal tent of the Prince of Kadesh himself, and human plunder, 340 prisoners of war, and 83 hands that they had proudly collected from the dead. Even the annals appear to note the exceptional detail of the records kept by Thutmose. Everything which His Majesty did to this town and to that wretched enemy and his wretched army is set down by the individual day, by the individual expedition, and by the individual troop commanders. They are set down on a roll of leather in the Temple of Amun today. Spring sweltered into summer, and still the siege wore on. Thutmose sent troops against 3 other enemy towns in the region as well. From time to time, hungry locals staggered out of their besieged cities, and the pharaoh pardoned them. He had not come to annihilate the people of these lands, but to demand loyalty, control of trade routes, and tribute. In the span of several months, Megiddo and the 3 defiant towns surrendered to Thutmose. The annals dramatized the subjugation of the region. Now the princes of this foreign country came on their bellies to kiss the ground to the glory of His Majesty and to beg breath for their nostrils. He took their riches, grain, and cattle, and then he took their power, appointing new princes throughout the region. It was said that when Thutmose permitted the people to return to their towns, they went on donkeys, for the pharaoh had taken all of their horses. Then the army of Egypt began the homeward march, with loads of impeccable treasure, nearly 2,000 slaves, tens of thousands of livestock, and a harvest of wheat. In Thebes, the long-awaited return of the king came with proclamations.
Return of the king!
The city resounded in celebration and feast, attended by nobles, musicians, and dancers. Many followers knew the king by the throne name Menkaperah, lasting as the manifestation of Ra. The pharaoh was said to be the supreme creator god, whose authority was symbolized in the sun disk breathed.
I think the capital with cannons and just masses of troops.
The Battle of Megiddo
before France can get down to the peninsula of Italy, we might be able to win this.
Thutmose was called rival lords incessantly claimed authority in parts of Syria and Canaan, so year after year the relentless Thutmose returned to smite them. He built a great fleet to rapidly move strike forces north along the coast, and he maintained a network of fortresses in the region. Megiddo was the first of 17 military campaigns undertaken there by Thutmose across 2 decades. The masterful victories brought distant commerce, the tribute of foreign subjects, and gifts from Babylonia, the Hittite Empire, and Assyria. Turning his eyes south, the king also gained control over much of Libya. Many great rulers had sat on the throne of Egypt, but it was Thutmose III who built an empire. The likeness of His Majesty pervaded his prosperous domain, while the aging pharaoh devoted his efforts to building great works and monuments. He added the sacred lake, and towering gates or pylons. Battle of Megiddo. The end of this reign, in around 1425 BC, was described on the tomb of an officer. Lo, the king completed his lifetime for many years, splendid in valor, in might, and triumph. From year 1 to year 54, he mounted to heaven to join the sun. The divine limbs mingled with him who began. 20 years after, those who passed through the 7th pylon of Karnak beheld the striking image of the greatest warrior in Egyptian history, Thutmose III. And there, over 3 millennia later, it remains. This is around 3 hours of the artist Joseph Fields making one of the dozens of paintings he made for this video. We're just a 2-man 2017, so I actually spent weeks filling a 247-page document with research and historical references to help Joe depict ancient Egypt as accurately as possible. I'm sure you've noticed that AI content farms are flooding. I hope this kind of work survive on this platform. Go to the Patreon link in the description. Thanks.
On Chewy, save 35%.
I feel I may have entirely misunderstood him. Is it too much to think that he might have done this all for me?
The fuck, 2 ads. Fuck up.
By the 15th century, the Roman Empire stood on the edge of oblivion. The Paleologos dynasty, rulers faced a dire struggle. Their treasuries depleted from endless conflicts, and their court fractured by religious disputes and dynastic rivalries. In 1425, John VIII Paleologos took the throne, taking his hopes on melding the great schism between East and West. At the council,
I can't listen to that shit.
My friends, welcome to the first episode of Skyrim, but I'm just a fisherman, and meet Meldrew. Meldrew is a humble fisherman living on Lake Illanalta. He lives a modest existence, catching fish and selling them riverwood. He's also a bit of a grumpy guts. He's old, he's tired, he's cynical. He stays on the lake as much as possible, only heading into town when he needs to sell his catch, and for the occasional meal. Maybe an ale or two. So without further ado, I say jump into Skyrim, but I'm just passionate. Before I do continue, if you like this character, or like this video, and want to see more, feel free to let me know down below. Feel free to like and subscribe. It's much appreciated. Right, let's jump in. Right, first things first. Our very, very humble abode here. It's a very small island that we find ourselves on. Hey, Meldrew here has made good use of this space, setting up a very, very modest cabin here. Can you call this a cabin? It's really more like a hut, a fishing hut. It shelters him from the worst of Skyrim storms. Fire here to keep us nice and warm as well. And most importantly, it's far away from other people, because Meldrew here is a grumpy guts. He deals with people only when he must, mainly to sell his catch in Riverwood, because there is a very nice fellow who buys his fish from him. To feed himself, because this is not a hunting character. As Meldrew will be heading into inns to eat our supper, find bits and bobs and maybe get some small beer and get our meals from inns and taverns and whatnot, which means we are going to have to fish to earn septums, as we are in survival mode. We have to feed ourselves. Right, enough faffing about. Let's move on to this series. The goal is to eventually start our own fishing hatchery there, start bringing our own fish, and live a peaceful life. It's just a dream for Mel right now, but part of why he's so simple. See his dreams come to life yet. But we are here now. I'm sure he reaches his goal, his dreams. That's interesting. That's pretty much the overarching goal of this character. The first thing we need to do now is get some bait, because I'm playing with a mod.
Like, it's an interesting concept for a game, but like, it's not really what I'm looking for right now.
The bait we use is it.
This game, you're not ready for.
In 279 BC, the Romans developed a new and extraordinary weapon with one aim in mind, to defeat elephants. And it is about that weapon that I shall be talking in this video, which has been sponsored by no one, which is a bit of a shame because I had a mortgage to pay. Anyway, in order to tell this story, I have to tell you a few other things first. So bear with me. The first thing is chap had. Didn't have passports because they didn't use them those days. But if he had had a passport, you did your right hand occupation, you could have written something like itinerant king. Now, you may think that itineracy and kingship are mutually exclusive ideas, but you know, it seems that in the ancient world at that time there was an ecological nation, some would wander over the world saying, king for hire, anybody need a king, yes, no king here, love the king, anyone need a king, and more times than someone said, hey, do you know what, actually, we can do the king. Oh, brilliant, we've got a king. Now, the main reason he kept becoming king of places, he was king of Molossia and Pyrrhus twice, and later Macedonia, and arguably Syracuse, and then Sicily. The reason he kept becoming king here, hither and yon, because he had this amazing reputation as a war leader. He really knew what he was doing. He galvanized men. He knew how many spears he needed to take, and he knew about logistics. And in the field all the day, he kept his head, and he was good at his job. He first became king at this level, and granted, this was because he wasn't royal blood, but he didn't take the traditional route of being the son of the previous families betraying each other, killing each other. Some of them were cooks, some of the trainers, and possibly the men who actually rode them into battle may have been all the way from India. Anyway, when he was invited by the Tarentines from what is today Taranto, was at the time Tarantum, this is a Spartan Greek colony in southern Italy, Magna Graecia, he thought, right, I'm up for this, let's do it, and he went across the sea with a core force, an army of, we don't know how many, but tens of thousands from Pyrrhus, and then he joined up with loads of allies in Italy, and he fought his way around Italy, and he fought a big battle of Heraclea, that was in 280 BC, and he's very heavy cost. A lot of his best troops, his troops that had crossed over with him from his homeland, they got hammered. He lost very high casualties, and very high casualties amongst officers Plutarch, Cassius Dio, and Dionysus Halicarnassus. None of these is great. Not a long time after the event. Dionysus Halicarnassus was closest to the event, writing only 2.5 centuries later. Yeah, I mean, he had other sources written before him to work from, but even so, that's a long time out of living memory, so it's clearly going to be long. Process of Chinese whispers over the years, stories handed down by the generations until eventually someone wrote it down and then some person rewrote it but changed it. You know, by the time we wrote it, how do we know how accurate it was? Plutarch was writing a little bit later again, and as for Cassius Dio, 3.5 centuries later. And there's really to disagree quite a lot, even on who won Dionysus Halicarnassus seems to have it as a draw, Plutarch a win for Pyrrhus, and Cassius Dio seems to have it as a win for Romulus. So that's a big detail. Who actually won the battle? They disagree on quite a few other things as well. Now, I don't want to read vast amounts about everything to do with the whole battle, but I've got snippets here that are relevant to what I'm talking about today, relevant to the elephants and the Romans did to counter those elephants. Now, Plutarch, the parallel, by the way, if you want to read slingers and archers into spaces between the elephants and led his forces to the attack in dense array and mighty impetus. So, he's found on the first day that these elephants don't work well in bad terrain. Crossing rivers, trying to fight through forests, they don't really work. They are charging against the masses of the enemy on open and ideally level ground. We also learn, as you'll hear soon, that elephants didn't seem to be good at attacking uphill. So, the Romans, having no opportunity for sidelong shifts and counter movements, as on the previous day, were obliged to engage on level ground and front to front. And being anxious to repulse the enemy's men-at-arms before their elephants came up, they fought fiercely with their swords against the Macedonian spears, reckless of their lives and thinking only of wounding and slaying, while caring not for what they suffered. Really? They larger numbers of men, why would they suddenly care north? Why would they be so different from anyone else on the battlefield that day? Anyway, after a long time, however, as we are told, they began to be driven back at the point where Pyrrhus the greatest havoc was wrought by the furious strength of the elephants. No avail in fighting them, but they felt that they must yield before them. the elephants. Well, Cassius Dio, 110, if you're interested, writes, there was a river not easy to ford flowing between the two camps, and they inquired whether he chose to cross unmolested himself, or whether he would allow them to cross in order that the forces might encounter each other intact. So, from a battle with conditions equal, the test of valor might be made accurately. You believe that? Well, it's a nice thought, isn't it? The Romans delivered this speech to overawe him, and Pyrrhus granted him permission to cross the river, since he placed great reliance upon his elephants. So again, great emphasis on the elephants, but there are only a few elephants.
Alright guys, I'm gonna end the live here. We're gonna go live a bit more tomorrow. Same campaign probably, I think. And yeah, so I'll probably hop on, I don't know, whenever I wake up. I'll probably take a shower and you know, just morning stuff, and then I might I don't know. I might work on colonizing down here in East Africa. Actually, maybe we'll do a quick explore. No, I gotta hop off, guys. I'm tired as fuck. Yeah. But yeah, I'm gonna hop off, and this guy's, you know, he's a good channel. He knows a lot, but I don't know. I'm gonna hop off. I'm kind of tired. I hope you guys